Okay, so welcome back to another Sunday service. Today we're talking about how the rich have killed British culture, repackaging it as nostalgia and sending it back to us as propaganda. From Farage's pint politics to posh kids dominating the arts, we're asking now who really gets to create culture. And today I am joined by I can't swear yet, effing legend. We have got Terry Christian. I will let you introduce yourself because I won't do you justice.
Oh, I've just been round forever. I put that culture spelt with a capital K, according to some about me. But I'm like 65 now. I grew up in Manchester at a time when we were uncool. Went to school, primary school and secondary school with John Marr at Buzzcocks. My older brother was in the same class at the same school as Rob Gretton, who managed New Order and Joy Division. And I saw all that punk thing happen around me. Then the riots of 1981, I ended up being put on a show all based on the findings of the Scarman report after those riots, where they put 100 kids who were on the dole from inner city Manchester, and it was the World in Action team. So that was networked. So I first appeared on network TV in August 1981 as a proper gobby man, but I was dead left wing at the time, because we had read all the time, went to grammar school, but didn't sound it, because I was from inner city Manchester. I grew up like a mile away from Manchester city centre, an area of Old Trafford called Brooks Bar. That is the very border of Moss Side and New. So basically, Moss Side was like 100 yards away, and New was 200 yards that way, and then Wally Range about 200 yards the other way. So it was an interesting area to grow up in. And, mum and dad were Irish, like most people in the area. You're either
Irish
Irish descent.
Catholic, right?
Well, either Irish descent or black. I mean, you didn't really have much choice of it. The old Irish Catholic thing. There was quite a few Poles. We had a Polish club on Shrewsbury Street just behind us, but the Polish kids tended to be a bit better off. Their dads actually did skillful jobs. Because they were educated.
Actually skillful jobs.
Well, a lot of them. So they lived in the sort of posher, bigger houses on King's Road and going up that way and off up Charlton Road. And they didn't really. Their mums and dads didn't really like them mixing with us outside of school.
Oh
So
God, can relate to that growing up in probably one of the most Tory villages ever in the poor bit. I know you will knock me, you'll go, it's not post-industrial nor up north, but it was like there was like extreme divisions, man. There was like super poor, and then there was like unbelievably rich, like 7, 8 grand a term kids, mansions. But what I was going to say is most people will remember you from the word.
yeah,
And you were
yeah, it's a
talking
strange one.
you were talking just before we started about like being able to stay up late. I had really young parents. I was born to like 19-year-old parents,
Oh,
and they let
blimey.
me stay up. They were irresponsible enough to let me stay up and watch the word. And it was like a peek. It was so anarchic. It was like a peek into just a world that I wasn't really supposed to see. And it was life changing. And the thing that depresses me is that I don't think like everything's got so much more beige and commodified, and I don't think that we would be able to get away with something like that now. I mean, Maxine Peake even said, I wouldn't be able to make it now. So, is do you think there's any wonder in terms of that we've got a kind of cultural decline? The fact that we don't get to have that kind of expressiveness or like young
I
working class lads
thought,
like you were in
well, I mean, don't forget, even then, I was as unusual as I would be now. I mean, what made me unusual was I only got that job because Manchester was hit for about 6 months. So Channel 4, Tarquin and Quentin and Tristram went, we'll have one of those Manchester chaps. And
Tortelloni picked you out of the lineup.
no. So what was strange was, I mean, I literally was in between jobs on the radio. I'd just been laid off from Key 103, where I'd been the blue-eyed boy, allowed to play what I wanted 6 days a week, 6
Mm.
till 9 p.m. every evening, 2 till 5 Sunday afternoon, because I'd won 2 National Sony Radio Awards when I'd been working for the BBC in Derby in the best specialist music category. I'd
Mm.
run nightclubs, managed bands. None of that was ever mentioned when I did the word. It was as if it was a coincidence, despite me, not because of me. My first press release for the word, when I got the job, that went out to all the press, and I was away filming in America at the time. The guy who interviewed me for Channel 4, well, for 24-hour productions, who made the show, and this is quite funny. He said, so what have you been, what other jobs have you done outside the media? So, well, I haven't, I've been working in the media since I was 21.
Mm.
I said, well, I've done summer jobs. He said, well, have you never done anything else? I said, for 3 weeks when I had a big gas bill in between leaving Radio Derby and going to Key 103, I went and worked at the Dormer warehouse in Salford. And he said, what were you doing there? I said, picking sheets. It was bedding and sheets, Dormer. It was
Mm.
like textiles, picking sheets and bedding off a line, for like orders to go to the
Just like
House of Fraser.
production
Yeah,
line
or,
work. Yeah.
well, no, you go like, so this order is for Marks and Spencer's, so be 5 valance sheets, 5 of this,
Ah.
5 of that. You know what I mean? But anyway, when my press release came out, it went a former DJ and ex-sheet metal worker, Terry Christian. No,
What a
no, no.
combination.
Wait a minute. No mention of me winning 2 of these, National Sony Awards. The
That's
only reason I've
wild,
got them to
man.
broke them, right? The youngest person to ever win one, the first person to ever win two. And that's because the show had a working title of Club X, Club X2. And Club X had been a disaster. And my big boss at the Word was a bloke called Charlie Parsons. And Charlie, everything he touched really had turned to shit. He had no real experience, but he got through by being good at networking, having quite good instincts. So if this new show of his, was going to be a success, he couldn't, well, let's say it was a failure. He would have got the blame, not me, because people would go, well, you can't blame him. He's won 2 National Sony Awards. So
Do
none
you
of that
think
was
they were?
mentioned.
Do you think they
I
were?
actually, at the time, I just thought another inept public school boy taking the notes down and that they'd made a mistake. It's only later on down the line I think that was done on purpose.
That's what I was going to ask because I was wondering if they were kind of co-opting your edge because we see a lot of that at the moment. We see Farage doing it, claiming to be the old, working class man of the people, kind of like stealing our identity as working class people and just selling it back to us. Do you think that what they were doing was kind of almost like commodifying your class and your edge and
Well, I mean, totally. But I mean, obviously, you've got to remember, I didn't have bags of confidence. My
Mm.
dream was to be John Peel, and sit
Yeah.
behind a microphone and go, well, that was the Lucy Connolly Five and behind bars, and that kind of thing. Just doing that sort of cool thing, and that was me.
Equality five,
Well,
fucking.
you know what I mean? So I was like right across all genres of music, because I grew up in an area where I was into reggae, all the early punk, and really punk was driven for us by underage drinking. There was none of this ID checking in those days. If a band was on, bands in those days didn't go on stage in the week till midnight.
Man, honestly,
But
underage
but the
drinking is.
promoters were so desperate to let anyone in who'd pay for a ticket to pay for the PA and however much the band had cost them. So they'd let anyone in.
It's
If
the
you had a
British
ticket,
way.
if you were there to pay £1.20 on the door, they weren't going to say, oh, sorry, son, you look about 12, which I'm going to say when I was 16, I looked about 12.
Me
You
too, man. It
know?
didn't stop me getting on the Alco Pops and sneaking in because I think I reached my I think I became a teenager at the very end of the 90s. And underage drinking is like almost like a very British working class rite of passage. I say it well, actually the upper classes drink more, but because of our absolutely screwed social conditions, working class people die more of alcoholism because we've got worse outcomes. But
Stops the screaming in your head, but also
stop
back in my
screaming.
but back in my day, it was like you almost learn how to behave by underage drinking because if you mess about in the pub, and there'd only be about maybe 2 pubs in the area, in
Yeah,
about a square mile of where you live that would actually allow anyone under the age of 18 in. If
same.
you kicked up, if you made a pillock of yourself, you got barred. It was shame. Everyone laughed at you. The girls didn't want to
Yeah,
talk to you. It was all of that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
and you could only ever afford maximum two drinks. I remember going there, after the kind of local youth club disco on a Friday, going for
Oh,
last orders at the Seymour and having exactly 30p in my pocket, which was enough for a pint of cider.
That's
I
wild,
didn't
isn't
like
it?
the taste of beer.
Those good old days, man. I mean, I'm really missed the 90s. I do have a bit of nostalgia for it, but I try to kind of like stop myself from doing it because I don't want to get caught in that loop. But I was thinking back earlier about the 90s, and I was thinking like a lot of it actually was, when you look at the music and such, a lot of it was almost playing on a kind of like old 60s pastiche of like if you look at the Blur video Country House, that's like Benny Hill personified. You got people like Pulp, it was like the kitchen sink dramas made into music, but there was something else to it. Like people were able to, and even the most hardened progressives will kind of like, some people will quite go, oh, when you mentioned that the dole was the way to facilitate it, because what it did is it gave people that time that normally only a trust fund can give you, like
But,
council
but that was
housing.
more the 70s and even the 80s, where, you know, if you're signing on, you could go and get yourself a little flat. They'd pay for it.
But that's non-existent
Then
now.
even if you needed a washing machine, they give you a thing, you go out and buy a washing machine.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's been stripped back so far
Right,
that
well,
like,
they just want to make life incredibly tough without having anything to offer. Because I mean, I've had arguments online with people about where they go, well, they've got a lot more unemployed in Spain and this. What Spain always did, but also what the Tories have done here over the years is shrink who counts as unemployed. When Thatcher first came in, and when I was on that TV show, Devil's Advocate, about being with Johnny Marr, 17-year-old Johnny Marr out with
Johnny
Smiths on it as well.
Marr, wow.
But so then you could earn money on a Sunday and it wouldn't affect your dole, and
Mm.
you were counted as unemployed if you worked for less than 8 hours a week.
Mm.
Well, now if you just get 1 hour of 0 hours off per fortnight offered to you, you count as fully employed.
Yeah, it's
If you're
16
between
hours, I
60,
think.
if you're between 16 and 18, you're not
Mm.
allowed to sign on anyway. You can't count as unemployed. I mean, one of the things that drove recruitment for the gangs was, I think, during John Major's government, they just stopped 16-year-olds signing on who were on the dole from Manchester. So, of
Yeah.
course, they become great recruits to the local drug gangs.
Well, this is very much what we're having here. I mean, that they talk about all the kind of county lines gangs and like how are we going to stop knife crime. They don't care about working class kids, killing each other. They don't give a toss about that.
Well, they do when it happens in London because it makes them feel unsafe. I mean,
Well,
I mean, people were getting killed with Uzis in Manchester in the late 80s, early 90s. Man,
Uzi,
yes, Manchester Council used to keep it suppressed, because they didn't. Otherwise, they'd be made to do something about it.
Uzis. How the fuck did they get hold of
Yes,
Uzis? How?
well, everything from Liverpool.
From
They come in from the
Liverpool.
docks there. There was famous. The biggest heroin and cocaine dealers in Britain were John Harzer and a guy called Curtis Warren from Liverpool.
Mm,
John Harzer, when he was in prison, he said that he become like a supergrass because he had IRA contacts about guns and stuff. And how he got off, I think it
yeah.
was Michael Howard. How he got him off was he had his own blokes abandon a car at Holyhead with ashtrays emptied into it from pubs in
Wow.
Dublin, and then a load of guns in the boot. And he said, "Oh, it's an IRA stash." He'd gone out; his men had gone out and bought the guns apparently and shoved it all in there. But I mean, it was everywhere was a wash with it. I mean, but
Wild.
again, Benjamin Stanley, the 14-year-old kid who was killed in Alvino's takeaway in Moss Side. All of this stuff was happening here, but when it was happening up north, who gives a shit? Kids
Yeah.
stabbing each other in London. It's something must be done. It's like if the tubes go on strike, for a few days, it's like the whole country's, crumbling.
Yeah, man. I mean, they
Check,
kick off.
you can have the buses off in Leeds or Manchester for like 10 weeks. No one even knows.
Or no train links at all, or
Yeah,
like
no one knows. No one mentions it.
every public service just like absolutely decimated. I mean, it's always been hard, right? But I think it's much harder now because of the like mad cuts to welfare. Like
Well,
it's
people have put up with it. So
yeah,
now, it's like you've got They've got this idea of the white working class now. I mean, I'm 65, and my question is, when were the working class ever white? You know, it's a class. But what messed us all up was Cameron, and in many ways, he's the root of all evil. In 2010, the Equalities Act, the one he fought tooth and nail to keep out of a protected status was socio-economic background, because then it crumbles the whole of British society. You wouldn't have all this stuff. You wouldn't have the rise of the right. You wouldn't have all these fascists. You wouldn't have, because listen, I've worked for years and I've seen the discrimination against black people, brown people, but unfortunately, all the kind of equalities acts about race, what I see is a lot of quite posh, quasi-quartet type black kids getting into the media, and a lot of Asian kids who all went to private school, going into the media. So in that way, it's not kind of upset the system really.
Well,
Socio-economic background, they want to stop. Now that would have covered everyone. That would have
that's the
helped
thing.
everyone.
The thing that they've got in common there, I mean, you mentioned regardless of skin color, obviously there's always going to be extra barriers for people with skin color, but the common denominator there is the private school element.
Oh, class,
That's
yeah. I mean, they are. I mean, having worked with them for years, it is quite amusing because they're quite predictable in the behaviours. So it's like I remember some guy winning an award. It wasn't really his award; it was just part of an award, and everybody's going, "Oh, well done on your award," and he's going, "Oh, thank you very much, Dan." So I went, "What about me? I've won 2 National Sony Radio Awards. You're not going to congratulate me?" And he's like, "Hmm." Because I'm never going to end up being the head of entertainment at Channel 4 or ITV, whereas this guy possibly was, because he'd gone
or the
to
BBC
he'd
because
gone to
like
the Oxbridge. Well, I mean, there was always that. I mean, it was something which I probably didn't help myself by mentioning it all the time. But my particular no, but I mean, this is when I was doing the word. I had the profile to do it,
yeah,
but it meant nobody gave me those gigs. Then later on, when they did start employing people with northern accents and pretending they would let you work in radio, and all the rest of it, national radio, if you were working class. But I've won them. So if there had been a protected status for socio-economic background, I could have flashed 2 of them in 1986 and said, "Why are you giving that public school boy Simon Mayo a job on Radio One and not me? I've
unbelievable.
won two, so my CV's better than his." And that's the same way now, even on Radio 2, on Six Music. It's like there's always that frustration that exists in you, that's the reason you never got the jobs. Not because you were controversial, not because you were anything else. It's because they didn't like you at the time. And
Mm.
later on down the line, they don't want to admit that they got anything wrong. So they just double down on disliking what you represent to them.
And they control everything. Like this is the problem. So many people, huge percentages of people that went to work, went to private school, dominate the media. Like on every level, we're talking broadcasting, we're talking like presenting, we're talking being given a fancy travel show to go around the world, even though
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
talking with plums in their mouth. Oh, sorry, I just had a little interjection from my voice from behind. I've got Graham Hughes of Politics Social. Give him a follow. He's a legend. He is helping me out today. I've got one from Graham Hughes Presents. I don't know if this is the same Graham Hughes,
Yeah.
but he just says super chat. So thank you very much. And we've got Richard Marsden. Oh, you might know what this is. You used to get £350 fads vouchers and you picked from the decorating book. Now, I don't know what that is. Have you heard of that?
No, no, because again, I was never on the dole in that way, when I left home. So I don't
Thank you,
remember
Richard.
what. But you were looked after. You had a certain amount of dignity, and that was the big disappointment of Tony Blair's government, because they had the power. So let's go back to how it was before Thatcher, only
Yeah.
better. And he never did it. He did enough, but it was frustrating because you're saying, well, we want all this stuff renationalising. We don't want
Yeah.
the rip-off of being privatised. And he never did that. And then obviously, because the UK was a country that was always pushing to allow all the Eastern European countries,
Uh,
into the EU, the French and the Germans didn't want them. he never put any barriers to who could come in. So we ended up with all the sort of Romanian gypsies and everything,
Yeah,
and
but that's
everyone
never.
flooded in.
Yeah, but that's never been kind of economically, historically the problem because they contribute to taxes, etc.
Well, yeah, but we hadn't built the infrastructure,
Well, but
so
that was
you
mostly
can't
ground.
bring. Well, no, I mean just in terms of like the schools, because a lot of them brought families with them, because they were persecuting in Romania and Bulgaria and all the rest of it. They came over here, and then likewise, they hadn't built the infrastructure, and to bring people in when there's no infrastructure is just insane.
And there'd also been like an enormous amount of decline because there was like years and years of Thatcher, year,
Yeah,
then
no council
Major.
housing.
No, yeah,
Council housing ended up being emergency housing.
she
So if
sold it
you
off.
if Yeah, so if you live like where I lived, or more so Salford and all the rest of it, where there's massive council estates, and you've been on the council waiting list for 10 years, and then suddenly a family of 8 from Somalia, who are all like traumatized by war and all the rest of
Mm.
it, move straight in, then that's quite frustrating because it's like, no, the thing is, it's like they need it more, and that's how council, giving out council housing
Mm.
worked. But then there was that problem when those people then complained about it, they were immediately called racist, which they might have been, but that wasn't that what they were moaning about was the unfairness of it.
It's tricky though, isn't it?
Well,
Because
no, but that's what happened. So this is where you got this resentment then built up against Labour. And the irony now is, if you look back through all the different governments through history, 75% of Commonwealth immigration was under Conservative governments. But because of
yeah.
what happened in the Blair years, now it's immigration is forever associated with Labour, and it's just insane.
And it's also kind of crazy how a lot of people wrongly attribute like the whole Cool Britannia Britpop era to him too, because it was happening. Well, it started with like the shoegaze, and then you went on to all the, that kind of all that stuff was happening before Blair took
Well, the
over.
Manchester thing was caused by Thatcher, so it became
Exactly. That's what I was going to ask you.
a
Yeah.
do-it-yourself culture. So
Yeah.
Manchester was amazing at that time. All the little labels, all the little clothing labels,
Yeah.
Joe Blogs. I mean, there's a lad in Manchester called Carl Campbell, well, Salford actually, and he was the one who started got the Happy Mondays in with Joe Blogs, and then did clothing deals for all the other bands. So that bands were like sponsored almost,
Mm.
and then he had all the t-shirts and the merchandising, all of that. It's like a mini industry. I mean, obviously it went alongside drugs, which is another part of Thatcher's enterprise culture. I mean, funnily enough, her big economist guru, Milton Friedman, about the free market society. He said you can't have a genuine free market unless you legalise drugs and tax them.
Well, surely if you'd have been up for that. I
Well,
mean,
no, but you see, you can't have a free market if you don't tax land ownership, if you don't tax your most valuable asset, and that's what makes us feudal
I
and
mean,
backwards.
it was all like a massive kind of like working class reaction and rebellion. I mean, I remember the rave scene was also kicking off in Essex. Like the Prodigy came from really close to where I grew up, like really close. And it just felt like there was this kind of like urge for rebellion. Now, a part of me is wondering if it isn't, we've talked about the kind of like socio-economic bits where the dole was taken away or it's been cut to ribbons. Like I was wondering if there's anything more to it that you think that could have a factor
I
in
mean,
why
what was interesting about the rave scene was before that, outside of a football terrace, the only place where working class kids got together would be the Northern Soul scene, where they would travel from all over
yeah.
the country, for these soul all-nighters in the 70s, like the continuation of the mods. And the rave scene did that so much that it changed language. When I went to Polytechnic in London, I
Polytech.
remember on our course, applied biology, right? And on our course was this girl that everyone fancied. And I started 6 weeks after the rest of them because it was Polytechnic. It's mainly local kids.
Mm.
I only went there because the only other choice was London or Preston. And I had a mate who was at Thames Poly in London, in Woolwich. So I went down there and I remember seeing this girl and went, oh, she's fit. And one of the lads went, yeah, I think she does play quite a lot of squash. But you see, the rave scene brought that language from the north to the south. A lot of our phrases then ended up in the south. I mean,
Especially in the 90s too, like mad for it was everywhere.
but I remember like this black woman who's working at Channel 4. She was trying to convince me that fit came from black people. But I said, well, no. I said, we've always, even in the 60s, people said that.
Did
You
they?
know what I mean? Yeah. In the north and even in the Midlands. But it was almost like, because obviously, again, the jazz funk all day, which was a precursor to the rave scene. So
Uh,
amongst, you know, black people would travel all over. So they go from London to Rock City in Nottingham, for the jazz funk all dayers. They go to Manchester, they go to Sheffield and all that. And then they'd all go down south, whether it was Brent Town Hall or wherever they were having it. So there was that mixing all the time. But yeah, I thought, well, you can't steal everything off us.
well, there's
Fit.
well,
She's fit. He's fit.
to be fair, I mean, we have robbed black culture blind, but I'm just going to quickly go into a super
Yeah,
chat
of
from
course, yeah.
Michael McIntyre. Thank you very much. He says, "Hello, Terry Toon Toon." I don't know what that means, but hopefully it's not an
No, no,
insult.
no. Tune. Everyone used to go tune,
Toon
didn't they?
Toon.
If it
And
was good, but that's actually Jamaican,
there you
because
go.
that's what they do in the 50s and 60s. If someone put something great on the jukebox, they go tune.
I'd every day is a school day. We've also got Richard
That's in
Grumpy
Chris
Git.
Blackwell's autobiography, actually.
I'll have to give it a read. Richard Grumpy Git here says rave scene was killed by the '94 criminal justice bill. I don't know, man. I was raving in the very early 2000s. If I would say the thing that properly killed the rave scene was the end of like the squatters' rights, because I used to I was living
Well,
in a
isn't that what he's talking about?
possibly, yeah. I mean, I was living in a bunch of naughty little rave squats when I was around that age, and but also ketamine killed the rave scene.
Oh my
I
God.
strongly stand by that. Just weirdos washing a load of like Elon drugs and just dribbling and falling all over the place like idiots. But what I was going to ask you is, do you also think, because it wasn't just the kind of financial aspect, but what I was going to say earlier is you weren't besieged by tech back then. I mean, I remember growing up in the 90s
I
and
wish I was. I'd have sustained my earnings much better.
are you sure though? Because like,
Well, yeah, because you've got to remember, I had daily daily assaults on me in the newspapers that we just weren't true. So it'd be like, idiots like Piers Morgan. I
ugh.
remember Piers Morgan in the Sun doing a thing called a double page spread, and it was Terry Christian, 20 of my favourite things. Completely made up. It was like, what's your favourite food? Pizza. I've never been a fan of pizza. So I believe you're into music, and then me going, yes, I've been listening to the new Jason Donovan album a lot recently. And it was all like, what? Anything to make you look naff. And it wasn't just the tabloids that do it. The broadsheets were as bad, if not worse. And the trendy sort of magazines like Q, Mojo, The Face, Enemy, Melody Maker, they were even worse again.
So you didn't have any right to reply, is what you're saying.
No, I just want to smash people's faces in a lot of the time.
So that must be
I,
so frustrating because they're saying all this mad stuff about you, and I suppose you haven't got the ability to set the record straight because they're in control
well,
of
you
all the
can't
information.
because what can you do? And
Yeah.
it was like now and then it turned around, and I had people going, "Oh yeah, putting that fake Mancunian accent on," and you still get idiots saying that now. I literally grew up a mile away from Manchester. Why would you put it on? And if you did, don't you think one of my many brothers and sisters, one of my mates might have said, "Oh God, he never used to speak like that."
That's
He used to
wild.
speak like that. Then he started I mean, if you go back, you can see me on that national TV show in 1981. I sound even more Mancunian.
Yeah,
So
even
why would you
more.
put it on? It wasn't Manchester wasn't hip in 1981. Nobody said, "Oh, look at that! What an advantage that is in your career." I mean, it was quite, and I even get that snide thing now off people, and you go, mate. And it's always people who themselves are fakes. Always the Man City fans trying to dig you out for being a United fan.
Or privately educated people. I mean, the
Well, no,
problem,
no, but often it's guys who aren't from Manchester themselves who are saying it, but they like to associate themselves with it. And you go, well,
yeah.
it's never been any advantage to me.
No, no, no. I mean, I remember growing up around it, actually. Like a lot of people from Essex used to kind of like look down their noses at people from up north. And
Yeah,
it's
but we really look down our noses at people from Essex, to
and
be
it's like,
fair.
man, we're all yeah, but my view is always, even from a young age, I always knew inside, but I was like, but we're all poor, like we're all
Yeah,
broke.
yeah,
Like, what's the? Sorry, I've just got a quick super chat here.
yeah,
Uh,
sure.
Alice Demker saying, Super Tansky, ask Terry what his YouTube channel is. I've put it in the description of the thing here, and you can
Yeah,
also.
the Manchester Culture Bunker. I mean, I'm just trying to create this archive. I've got loads of stuff that needs digitising and putting it up there. Then I want to comment on stuff and then do interviews because I'm actually writing, finally getting around to writing the ultimate Manchester music book, but it
Good
probably be three
lad.
volumes called True Faith, the ultimate history of Manchester music. It's got black people and women in it too.
Oh wow, man, you're like beyond progressive.
Well,
That's
no,
wild.
nobody ever recognises all the black artists from Manchester.
No, I
So
agree.
Manchester had the very first black British artists to get to number one in the charts were
Mm.
from Manchester. Sweet Sensation, Sad Sweet Dreamer, back in
Sweet.
1974. They even made a documentary saying it was a real thing from Liverpool. It wasn't.
It
And they
wasn't.
tried to wangle out of it. So, yeah, but the guitarist in the eight-piece band that was Sweet Sensation, Gary Shaughnessy, was white. So that disqualifies them, does it?
Got another one here correcting the record, by the way, from earlier. Let me just find him. We've got Michael McIntyre. I hope it's not like Michael McIntyre. Come on, Terry. Tune, it's Geordie.
Oh, the town. I thought you meant
Tune.
tune like that. Oh,
I thought he
tune.
meant
Yeah, yeah.
tune.
Well,
Tune.
I used to fill in on the radio up in Newcastle for a guy called Alan Robson on a show called Night Owls. And that was always quite good fun, especially when I did the phone in there the week before Man United played them in the FA Cup final in 1999. And we won the treble. And they're all ringing up saying, right, Terry, what you reckon's going to happen in the cup final? And I'm just thinking of United and Bayern Munich. I
Is
said, oh,
that
I
your
think we'll
Geordie
have,
accent, is it, Terry?
yeah. I said, I think we'll beat the Germans. And then they'd be ringing up, but there's loads of Sunderland fans that ring up to wind them up too. And then one guy rung up, he said, right, Terry, well I admit that United are better than Newcastle. And he's about to go, but, and I just shut the fader down and said, that's the first sensible call I've had all night.
It's wild.
Then it all
Absolutely
go
wild. Do
mad.
you think, like, I was going to ask you, do you think it's harder? Because I was looking at the stats on this earlier, and I was thinking, like, a lot of people have the considerations of, like, the Dole, council houses. I was shocked, and this isn't a bloody clickbaity, I was shocked to find out, but I was absolutely shocked to find out that 16.4%, still low, of creatives came from working class backgrounds in the 90s. So they were people of that era that kind of came of age
Yeah,
in
but
the
they
90s.
wouldn't have been work. They weren't working on TV.
This
They,
says creatives who were
yeah, so
working.
so they'd be doing things like graphic design, blah blah blah, advertising, stuff like that. And
It
he
was actually well there's further information, but did you know it's 7.9% now? So it's over half. Like, well, no,
well,
it is. Yeah.
when I started, the only person who was recognised, other than someone like Michael Parkinson, who's
Was Parky working class?
yeah, oh yeah, they were miners. They actually did a "Who do you think you
Really?
are" on Parkinson and scrapped it because they found out his dad was a miner, his granddad was a miner, his great granddad was a miner.
And
No
that
one
was
had
it.
done anything. They'd all stayed in the one pit village digging coal and coughing the guts out age 48.
Oh God.
But yeah, and then Danny Baker, he was like the
Danny
Bermondsey
Baker.
boy. But he had like bags of confidence, he was quite effusive and all the rest of it. So he was the only working class person around. I even got interviewed by Greg Dyke when he was in charge of TVAM when I was 23, 22. And Danny Baker was going on to do something else. And he showed me a clip of Danny Baker. And he said, can you do that? And I was just being glib because I thought, why am I even, I can't do anything. I work on the radio. I'm going to be John Peel. And I said, what a daft Cockney accent. And I think that was me gone. But I mean, they used to say things like this to me and I would just curl up. I used to read interviews by other people who were working on the TV at the same time as me, were young, like
Mm.
Andy Crane and people like that. And they'd always say, well, well, I want my own chat show one day. And I thought, I would never dare say that even if that's what I wanted.
What, you didn't feel like it was a possibility, or you
Well, it
didn't?
just it just seemed a bit squirmy. I
Oh,
mean, the strangest thing that happened to me was when there was a guy, it was Zigzag Productions, I think they were called. I think the bloke was called Danny Cohen or something like that. Londoner, but I think he was a big Arsenal fan. And he wanted me to present this football show for him. Anyway, he went to the guy at Channel 4, this new guy called Stephen Keaton, and said, "Oh, right, yeah, Terry, he's a big United fan. He's grew up in Old Trafford. He's had a season ticket 20 years. He's been going for all these years." And this is what the guy said to him, right? He just thought it was in the bag. The guy said, "I don't see Terry as a football person." And so this Danny, obviously, it's his company. He's got the commission. He wanted me because he thought it would be good and I bring an audience. But he's going, but he can't argue because you're not allowed to argue. You have to go, yeah, yes, sir, that's right. If you say he's not a football person, he's not a football person. And that's the kind of ridiculous nonsense you get. God, I put about 3 documentary ideas, 2 of them about Northern Soul, one about John Cooper Clarke, all into BBC 4 when it first started, and then didn't even get a meeting with the guy
Wow.
there via a proper agent. My agent at the time was looking after Professor Brian Cox. And it was like, we don't see Terry Christian as a BBC 4 person. And that's it. Your foot isn't even in the door.
I'm not
And yet
surprised.
these people have never met you.
Well, no, and they're not likely to because you don't run in the same circles of them, do you? I
Well,
mean,
I mean, I don't mix. I mean, I sent you a clip that is on my YouTube channel of there was a guy, and he was a commissioning editor at Channel 4 who commissioned The Word. Now, the name of The Word came from the page I wrote in the Manchester Evening News that came out every Friday, covering up and coming local bands. And it's called Stephen Garrett, ex Stonyhurst, Oxbridge, ever so posh, just never liked me. Now, he didn't like me because what would happen is someone would write something in an interview with me that wasn't true, that I hadn't said. And then he'd have me in his office bollocking me for something I hadn't said. And I'd
I'm
say, look, I didn't say it, right? So forget it. You know, it wasn't like I was a newcomer. I've been in the business for like 9 years. And then what happened was when he left as a commissioning editor and a new commissioning editor came in, there was a big double page spread in the Mail on Saturday magazine called What's Wrong with the Word by a journalist called Chrissy Eiley.
wild.
So she interviewed Stephen Garrett, and this is exactly, and this is, it's burned in my brain, this. So she said to Stephen Garrett, who commissioned The Word, she said, "So what's wrong with The Word?" And he said, Terry Christian. She said, "Well, what makes you say that?" You know, basically, this was the week after with very good, decent, not very great guests. We just had 2.78 million viewers on a Friday night at 11 o'clock.
That's
And he went,
wild.
"What would you replace him with?" He went, "A cactus." She said, "Well, why'd you say that?" He said, "Well, I remember when Terry was interviewing Whitney Houston, and Whitney Houston said she kept a gun in the glove compartment of her car. And Terry's next question was, 'When is your album coming out?'" Now that sounds funny, doesn't it? But
I mean,
if I'd
that
have
is,
said, but that was never the case. I've actually put the clip on YouTube. Now, what happened was I went over and I did an interview with Sybil Shepherd in America, and I was chatting to her about because she used to be Elvis Presley's girlfriend. So I was kind of saying, "Well, what was that like?" You know,
yeah, 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 yeah.
well, do you know all that kind of thing? And she was brilliant. And she said, "Well, she said it is impossible for any human being to cope with that level of fame." And
Yeah.
ever since what happened to John Lennon has happened, I've always carried a Smith and Wesson, a 38 Smith and Wesson in the glove compartment of my car. And I pretended, even though I've
Oh.
seen loads of westerns and gangster films, to not know what a Smith and Wesson was. For her to say, "Oh, you English, you're so cute, you don't understand about guns." And then she went into a spiel about, women learning to use weapons of men. Then it was, boom, The Word, then into me, live in the studio, Whitney Houston, Boy George. My first question to Whitney Houston was, "So Whitney, have you got a gun?"
Oh.
"No, I won't have guns around me. I'm protected by the light of God." Taking a piss a little bit. Hallelujah. Messing about like that. But he said that I'd said to her, "Have you got a gun?" She told me that she kept a gun in her glove, which wasn't true. Now, that story went all around the media. Rory Bremner used it in his stand-up show for 4 years about how thick I was. Um, when I did a big film, I did the Mentor Film and Television Festival at Birmingham University,
Mm,
and on the panel was that Stephen Garrett.
mm.
And somebody asked me a question. He said, what's the best way to get into TV? I said, go to public school, go to Oxbridge. And he came in, he said, well, Terry's always had this chip on his shoulder. I thought,
Has
says the
any
guy who went to public,
wonder?
right? And then he goes, but I remember when Terry was interviewing and he thinks that's why he didn't get on. But I remember when Terry was interviewing Whitney Houston, and the same bit of slander he repeats again in front of everyone. And then afterwards, backstage, I'm going, Stephen, I never said that. If I'd have said it, all my mates would have been taking a mickey out of me for weeks. I said,
Absolutely, yeah.
I've actually got, I kept very few copies of shows you've done. But if you're having Whitney Houston in live, when she's the biggest female artist on the planet, you make sure your then girlfriend takes that one
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
keep it,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want
yeah,
to
yeah.
see me being in awe of Whitney Houston. And she was great, by the way.
Well, yeah, I
So
mean,
that went
she's a
all around, even to the extent, and I'm no one. So when the word had just finished, Rory Bremner went on Clive Anderson Talks Back on, and he spent 5 minutes plus of his time on that, slagging me off for being thick. I've never
oh
met the guy,
man.
but the production company that made his comedy show was run by Stephen Garrett. So he'd been told
Wow.
that story, just believed it. Anyway, I found a copy, copied it off, sent to Stephen Garrett, saw him at the Edinburgh TV Festival a couple of years later. He never apologised to me. He just blanked me.
Oh,
When I bumped into that Chrissy Eiley again, I said, Chrissy, if I'd have said something like that about Stephen Garrett, that impugned his intelligence and slagged him off, you'd have double checked to make sure it was true.
not just that, they would have, yeah, they'd have probably sued you. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I said,
someone,
all you have to do was ask for a copy of the video.
I mean,
Oh, you can see, not that I'm triggered by it.
not that it bothers you anymore. I mean, but,
No,
but
I'm going to
it
say,
would, it would
there's
bother
so many
you.
of them. It's frustrating that you
And you
can never.
had no right to reply, or no, or it wasn't as, you didn't have necessarily as much
Well, I should have
power to
sued.
reply.
I should have sued at the time. It was
Absolutely
all
should have.
provable, and I'd have got paid off. But you have to prove that it's cost you money, and it's cost you
Yeah,
work. But that's why I wasn't getting meetings with BBC Four.
that's
Oh, I don't
enraging.
see him as a BBC Four person.
And it costs you money to sue. Someone here just said, Darren Star, thank you very much, says one of Terry's problems was that he had a dickwad press officer at Channel 4 who used to make stuff up for tabloids for
Yeah, all the
birds.
time. I mean, that was their brief. So it was
Thank you.
Neil Redding. And what used to happen was and this literally happened. I'm at home, and because I've been doing some work in the summer for
Yeah.
MTV, they gave me a free fax machine and a free satellite dish and a free card to go with it. So I had the movie channels and all that. There was only two at the time, and Sky Sports when no one else did. So there was loads of us round our house watching United away
Mm.
against Spurs or whatever on a Sunday afternoon. This Neil Redding's put another false story out, that I've gone into hiding because I've had a death threat. The phone goes, landline, I pick it up, hello, and it's Piers Morgan. He says, Terry, it's Piers Morgan here. I believe you're in hiding because you've had a death threat. And I went, Piers, you've rung me on my home number. I'm hiding at home. Now, I'm watching United. Now, fuck off. So
What a
he
give.
rang me again. He went, I'm warning you, Terry, don't dare tell me to fuck off. Guess what I said to him?
Fuck off.
Exactly. You're reading my mind now. What was really weird was, and so this was happening all the time. It used to drive me mad because I've never had anything like that. I never had any aggro at all when I
Mm.
was in the word, and it was portrayed as if I was like the most evil person on the planet.
Yeah.
And yet that was never the case when I went out. Mind you, given some of my mates in Manchester, it wasn't ever going to happen there. But it was
You
kind
were
of weird.
protected by this. I mean, no
I
one.
mean, it kind of back. So one particular mate of mine was in a very, very well-known gang, right? But he was also involved in the music scene. So he was managing a band from Manchester. All right, that's going to be my lad. Yeah, I'm doing a Zoom thing, James. Speak to you later. See you. Bye.
Right, well, I'm just going to quickly interject there because
Yeah,
someone
sure.
said Richard Grumpy Git, thank you very much. You said Snoop Dogg Emu was hilarious, and I know I that is burned into my memory.
But I wasn't there that week. That was Mark Lamar.
Ah, but you were there for Nirvana.
Well, yeah. So I remember that show because, in fact, on my radio show tonight, I played Interstellar. We were a band from Manchester with Stella Grundy, the lead singer. They were a great band, but never made it.
Really?
Um, Dreams from Paradise, and they were the other band on that show.
Ah,
So tight on them, you know, that they were there with Nirvana on the
I mean,
same show doing Smells Like
you were
Teen
never going to
Spirit.
stand a chance up. I mean, who are the people going to remember?
Well, I mean, the thing is, when we did it live, because we were overrunning slightly, and I mean, that was another weird show for me because again, was from Stephen Garrett again. We had David Baddiel and Rob Newman on, you know, the Mary Whitehouse Experience guys.
Absolutely, yeah.
They were the guests, and he wanted them on. I didn't particularly want them on. I didn't find it very funny. I found it all a bit glib and middle class.
Mm.
Sorry, but I am an inverted snob. And this is what my brief was, that I had to be nice to them. And do you know what that meant? I had to sit there for an hour and allow them to abuse me, not take the
Oh.
piss out. It wasn't funny. Listen, I've got too much Old Trafford in me for that.
Mm.
And then afterwards, I'm chatting to them, and I know that they're into football. So I was talking about my dad's best mate being the footballer John Sheridan's granddad, a guy called Tommy Cody. And do
Mm.
you know what? Rob Newman turned around to me and said, "Oh, so you have got some street cred."
Wow.
You know what? He was about that far away from getting knocked out.
I was going to say, did you feel like you wanted to
Oh, constantly,
chin them? Because
constantly.
what I was trying to think of today is like how we wouldn't get that. There's so much that we would be missing out on if we didn't have the kind of.
Well, imagine my mental health going through what I went through at that time just for doing a job and a job on a show that was successful.
And you'd got and it was a wicked show. But if you look at like the music scene too, like Oasis, Pulp, like I was going to mention earlier on J.K. Rowling, even though she's turned into a bit of a hateful bastard. And someone just said, some random geezer flew a trans flag on top of Ben Nevis. Love to see it. Dihydrogen monoxide. Thank you very much for that. But the thing is, we wouldn't have that. Um, Now we would have missed out on so much amazing music, and we'd have missed out on the word, which was kind of revolutionary of that era.
I mean, with the word, because I had quite so we sat down, and one of the things I said, we have at least one black artist, black band on every week, and that's because where I grew up, and I always knew it's a big thing. You know, Kenny Lynch going on the Van Doonican show was a big thing to my mates when they were age 6.
So
Just to
did you
see
have any
someone,
say in that then? Were you able to kind of put your order
yes,
and
yes. Well,
say,
you see, listen, Tarquin and Quentin and Tristram aren't going to argue about that one. Even Felicity's going to dip out because they're all so white
and
and upper
also,
middle class.
Tortelloni's not going to have her finger on the cultural pulse, is she? I mean,
Well, I did have, I mean, this is one argument I had. One week, they couldn't think of a black group to have on. And
wild.
I went, oh, what about, and there was a rock band from America called Living Colour.
Mm.
And they were playing at Brixton Academy and they were quite good. I said, well, what about getting them on? And I remember this guy went, yeah, but they're not really black enough. And I said, well, what colour are they? Yeah, you know, and
What?
he went, well, what I meant was they're not really urban enough. I said, mate, you're about as urban as a second home in Tuscany. We did get them on. But I mean, I wasn't very good at it. You know, I wasn't good at euphemizing because it was I'd worked with really good people. You know, I'd worked with, you know, my sidekick on the radio was John Ronson, who went on to write, you know, all the, the many stare at goats and the psychopath test and all of that.
Mm.
I worked with Craig Cash and Carolina Hearn. I wanted Carolina Hearn to be the female presenter on the word. They wouldn't even audition her. Oh, we
God.
can't have two people from Manchester on the same show. You go, well, yeah, but you have no problem having two people from London on the show, do you?
I mean,
Yeah, even getting Oasis on, they wouldn't
that's
have
what I was
none
going to ask.
because we had a band on already from Manchester booked on that show. And I got, we can't have two bands from Manchester on the same show, Terry. I
It's
went,
wild. It's like token Northerners.
well, they didn't have a clue what they were talking about. I mean, what I'm saying
Yeah.
is a lot of the people I was working with had very little previous experience. They
Yeah.
weren't from those sort of backgrounds to do with music. So they were rubbish. You know, we didn't have the Cranberries on because of this dickhead who thought he knew more about music than me,
Oh,
and
that's
Paul
insane.
Ross. So that's one of the reasons I was able to get Oasis on, because every week after the Cranberries went mega, I'd go, Cranberries, Cranberries.
It's almost like the guy that said,
I'm gonna say, I fucking told you so, until your toes curl up and you die.
that's what I was
If
going to
you
say. It's like
ignore
the
what
guy
I'm
who thought
saying,
the
I'm coming for you. And
it's like
that's what made them paranoid enough to get Oasis on in the end.
well, it's like the guy who said like or missed out on the opportunity to or let the Spice Girls slip through their fingers or the Beatles if you want to go for a much better example. But the problem is nowadays we still have like dramas being written about working class life by upper class people. So there's like social realism, but none of the real context. Those people haven't really seen a broken sink or seen like the struggle of it. Do
I
you think
mean, it's quite funny. You were talking about pulp. I remember like someone said, Terry, what's wood chip? You
they
know,
don't know
like,
what wood chip is?
well, of course, people don't have wood chip on the wall. That's council house
How can
wallpaper,
they
isn't
not
it?
know what wood? I literally had that on the walls of my house growing up on
Yeah,
landing.
but what happened was that when the council modernised your houses in the late 70s, they just put wood chip everywhere, didn't
We
they? Because it
had
was
it.
cheap.
Yeah,
Everyone used to scrape it off in the front room, but it took forever, and it'd
it
get under your
did.
fingernail and all that. You know what I mean? And put proper wallpaper up. But the rest of the house, that was it. Wood chip forever.
We had that on the landing, and it was a proper like. Well, obviously, as landings are, they're quite tall. In the end, I'm certain there was areas where they just plastered over it, like because you couldn't get the fucker off. And also the whole broken biscuits thing as well. It's like I know exactly what that was like. There's
Hey,
so.
you mentioned the Spice Girls.
Oh yeah.
I could have given them their first TV on a show I did on Sky called The Hit Mix, and we used to have
Um,
one live band on every week. But me and this girl on it called Sybil Rowbottom, and she was down south but had lived in Manchester for a while. We wanted this Manchester band called Pure Essence on. They were fantastic, so we had them on instead, doing
who do
doing
people
traffic
remember?
jam in memory lane. And the Australian woman who was in charge went mad at us for the next year because we
Well,
missed out on the Spice Girls.
that
Tell you
was
what I
your kind
want
of
when I really, really want.
that was your payback cranberries moment. It's like, well, you
Pure
can't
Essence was still better.
you can't win them all. But I'm really bothered by this. Like I've got a proper chip on my shoulder about being spoken for by like whether it's twats like Farage or whether or even people also. I don't know if you relate to this. People that are also on the left but are proper Tarquins, right? That are kind of
Well, I mean, there is an issue there. I mean, I was in God just because I loved annoying people, so
no
I joined the Socialist Workers' Party when I was 18. That was at the Manchester Carnival against Rock Against Racism with Buzzcocks and Steel Pulse. So I joined the Socialist Workers' Party there. So when I went to Thames Poly, I used to sell papers for the Socialist Worker Party, yeah, and go to their meetings, which are a bit like leave your brain on the table outside, and do you know what I mean, and all that kind of stuff. But the big enemy of the left at the time was Saddam Hussein, and then they're all like supporting him, marching. Then what happened was I left the Socialist Workers' Party because they were harassing me because they reckoned that I owed them 30 quid for papers I'd sold. You know what I mean? So then I joined the Workers' Revolutionary Party, Vanessa
oh
Redgrave's lot. And
fucking
then I
hell.
used to sell papers for them, which were easier to pay because they had a TV page in. And then similar kind of harassment, bourgeois harassment, happened to me where they were saying, "Where's that 50 odd quid you owe us?" You know what I mean? I'm going, who sold the papers? You know what I mean? It's like wealth redistribution.
I
Then
was
I joined, then I joined the Labour militants and he used to sell their paper. I bet was it called Young Socialist or was that the WRP one?
work
And
social
again,
worker.
again, sooner or later, our ideologies rubbed up against each other, where they seem to think that they should get the money from the papers that I'd sold on their behalf when I'd spent it. Needs must. So really, I was kind of ejected from a lot of these left wing parties because of their greed,
I
their
tell you what,
bourgeois values, and their greed.
Terry, only you.
That's why the revolution never happened. I'm telling you, because I owe collectively the far left about 130 quid.
What I was going to say is only you could have a bunch of socialists essentially chasing after you like bailiffs. I mean, that is wild, man. I mean,
I used to use, but what had happened is I remember like selling the sort of Labour militant thing outside Woolwich Arsenal train station. You get loads of like sort of BNP types and all the rest walking by, and they'd all be going, oh, and I'd go, wind your neck in, Mussolini stroke Hitler. You won't do anything about it anyway. I wasn't very, what's the word for it? I wasn't very reconstructed in those days. And then the same thing, I'd have my former colleagues going, "You're revisionist," and I'd be going, "Wind your neck in, Trotsky, Lenin, add whatever bits you want on." And there is that. I mean, there is this thing that amongst the far left with the middle classes where they have certain hobby horses and they don't mind a left-wing party losing all the time because they think, well, if things get really bad, they'll all man the barricades for us. We can
well,
lead them in the revolution.
this
You
is
know,
this is the thing. I mean, again, another pulp lyric
you'd be
is,
there, you'd be there. Manning the barricades with Aaron Bastani waving a flag behind you,
oh,
going,
don't
"Hey,
get me
chaps, over the top."
don't get me started on him. But the thing that annoys me about it is that these people, like the whole, if you called your dad, he could stop it all. That's very much what it is. And like some of us, regardless of how perfect or imperfect Labour is, a lot of us would literally not have survived another Tory government. And then you get people that are able to they've got the privilege of idealism because they are literally privileged. So they're going to be okay either way. They're not going to
Well,
lose
no,
out on
there was
business.
always that went on in the Labour Party, and there was always this thing of, well, if you're in power, like I remember a lot of people on the left just didn't bother voting in '79, and that's why James Callaghan lost that. And look what happened, Thatcher. Had Labour won that election in '79, we'd have had all the money from North Sea oil. There would have been no privatisations. We'd have ended up with a
Mm,
society very similar to sort of Sweden or the best bits of Germany, where we
mm,
all had money. We could all go on 2 holidays a year.
mm.
That's the kind of socialism that you're looking at.
Yeah.
And that was taken away from everyone. I mean, Thatcher was the worst thing. I love what Christopher Hitchens said about Thatcher. He said she was a national catastrophe posing as the antidote to a national catastrophe.
And look at what we've got now. Exactly
Exactly.
the same thing in Farage. Exactly the same thing.
Well, I mean, the thing is that he's lied to them once about Brexit, and
Mm,
now he's just coming back for more. It's like the old age pensioner who gets conned by road builders to pay 2 grand for a new aerial, and then they come back a few weeks later and say, "Look, your pitch will be. Are you satisfied with your TV picture? Look, give us another grand and we can make it even better." And then she goes, "Oh, they were lovely men, and my pictures never looked as good on my 24-inch black and white TV."
mate, I swear it's like he's got that pen out of what's that film where they've got the pen that it removed Men in Black. I don't understand like where the fuck the working class's self-respect's gone.
But it isn't
Because
the working, it's still a minority of them. And most of the people like Farage are posh guys.
you're not wrong there.
They're the kind of Nigel, the golf club bore types who never, they just, they just have a default setting of
Terry, you
what they
say
think.
that, but it was actually more the work. It was in the kind of areas, the upper, like the northern areas. I think it was. I might be wrong on this, but I'm certain it was actually more the very slightly more middle class people that voted reform. Actually,
Well, even in those red wall areas, a lot of the votes there are an anti-Pakistani vote because a lot of the councils are quite corrupt up there. And so a vote for Labour is seen as a vote against your own,
well, there's been a
and
gradual.
that's
Right.
kind of that's kind of in there. It's just the way that certain councils are run.
Do you feel like we're getting a kind of like almost like a kind of going back to the National Front days at the moment?
Well, yeah. I mean, probably worse
Mm,
because things now are worse than they were.
mm.
But corruption is a lot. The way our whole government structure in this country is so corrupt. Who is that Italian mafia guy who said that the most corrupt country on the planet is the UK because of because of the money laundering, because of everything else, the way councils are run,
Russia,
because of
yeah.
the weird thing again, with even local councils is nobody gets involved. If everyone joined the Labour Party, then their councils wouldn't be controlled by the people that are often controlling them.
And also the absolute number they've done on infrastructure, and it's just been absolute
Well,
decline.
well, well, they've taken all the money away from the councils, so the councils then have to put up the. But this is what Thatcher did. This is where she was clever.
Mm.
So when she nationalised everything, the reason for that was when your when gas was nationalised, electricity nationalised, the telephones. If your phone bill went up, your water rates went up, or your gas bills went up, it was blamed on the government. So he said, I'm not voting Labour again. My gas bill went up a tenner a quarter last year.
This
So
is a
by
worry.
privatising it, the government can't be blamed for that anymore. And that's what they do, and they did it with the councils. So they take the money away from the Labour councils,
Mm.
and then the Labour councils haven't got any money, and then Labour get voted for the state of everywhere when it's to do with rate capping by the
This is a
Tories.
real worry, Terry. This is the worry that I've got at the moment with reform, because obviously they've managed to get hold of about a bunch of councils, and it doesn't matter how shit they are because they're so small, they can get away with it. Yet they're still dominating media coverage. So if they
Well,
do
I think
really
that's crazy why they are. I
no, but if
do
they do
get
really
it.
badly, Terry, in that area, they can just blame it on Labour. If they do really well, they can take all the credit for it. This is the worry. They're so clever with it. They've got us into a situation where we're over the barrel because no matter what, they can kind of come out on top, can't they? And they've got
They're not
everyone on their
because
side.
they've got nothing to offer you if you're working class. They're just the Tories, but the right wing of the Tories.
Further to
They've,
the
they've got
right.
they've got no policies, and you've always had the old switch and bay. Ever
Yeah.
since I was a kid, it's like the Tories. They always got working class voters by saying they were going to stop immigration. Yet
Mm.
they let all the immigrants in. It's the old bait and switch. It's like Brexit. We're going to control our borders. Next thing you know, we've moved our border effectively from like Calais to Dover, and like the French don't have to stop. We're out of the Dublin Agreement, and you just get swarms of people coming over in boats.
Divide and
And it,
conquer. It's been
and then they
beautifully
also
served,
just
man.
just replaced. And I remember seeing Jacob Rees-Mogg ask this pre-referendum. And he said, "Well, who's going to replace all these EU workers when we leave the EU?" He said, "Well, we'll just bring in millions of workers from outside the EU." I thought that's not getting mentioned, is it? So you're basically telling people at Cambridge, in a debate, that you're just going to replace EU workers with workers from India, Pakistan, and Africa, which is basically what's happened. Whereas loads of people, after Brexit, as I met, they voted Brexit to stop people from brown-skinned countries coming in.
And they're the people that are going to be literally wiping their asses for them when they can't. I mean, this is the
But you see, they're also people that are protected by ERG terms and conditions. So
yeah,
that can be taken away from them one day.
yeah.
Whereas like EU workers, I mean, there was even a reg made, wasn't there, where you're not allowed to pay an EU worker, migrant worker, less than the local going rate for a job.
Mm.
The only ones who benefited were builders, and that's because they could now charge treble for doing a shit job.
Yeah,
They'd go, "No, I've got to wait 18 months and you did a crap job. Well, suck it up, love. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Whereas
yeah,
you could get a good Polish plumber for a reasonable rate, not cheap, not undercutting anyone,
yeah.
just a normal rate.
And now
And they
they're
didn't
trying to
like that.
do this. Well, they're trying to do exactly the same shit, right? With kind of people not knowing what they're voting for with the ECHR. So that's just the new Brexit. But it's our last protection against the state. Like literally, that is it. That's it. You take away that, you've taken away everything. They can do whatever they want to
Yeah, but
you.
they really think reform are going to come in and then start grabbing brown people at random off the street and chucking them into lorries and driving them away, like Trump is. I mean, it's just not sustainable. No one can do that. No
Well,
one's going
Trump's
to
doing
just
it.
yeah, but it's just some weird idea. And that once we got rid of all these people, we'll all have a big house at the front and back garden. You know what I mean? And
It'll just
Nigel
make
Farage
loads
will
of
be
money
saying,
for the rich. Like
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
of
the plan
course,
is.
like Nigel Farage is going to, he was anti-trade union, anti every workers' right going,
Of course he
is
is.
somehow a man of the people because, it spouts a load of simplistic drivel while waving a pint around. I did question time just the once. Now, here's another one. When I was going on question time, and then you had the Five Live show that goes with it. They actually put a GIF out going, oh, imagine Terry Christian walking onto the set of Question Time, and it was Bez doing that, that GIF of Bez
What?
going like that. Yeah. So when I complained about impugning my intelligence, they said, no, it's just a bit of a laugh. I said, so if you had Bonnie Greer on, would you have like a GIF of Tina Turner twirling?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like, but that's what they did. But I was on with Richard Tice.
Shit.
Right. So, and it was the week where it just been released how much of a hit our economy would take because of Brexit. It was in Darlington, which was Brexit central.
Oh, of course, it was that recent, wasn't it? How long? What
Oh
year
no,
was?
this is a while. This is about 2018, I think. But it was like, what is it? He was on there, and he was going, and someone asked a question about that, about the findings, the OBR, and how much he said, garbage in is garbage out. And this is all he does. He just spouts utter drivel.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, right, Richard, aren't you the man who said that leaving the EU would be simple? And he said, well, it is simple. I said, everything's simple if you're a bit simple. But you end
Boom.
up being no, but you ended up being shouted down by everyone.
I
And I
know.
was on with
I know.
Emily Thornbury, and I had mutual acquaintances of her, including Lord Wahid Ali. It was my old
Oh.
boss. Hey, I need some specs off him. I've
I
only
was
got
gonna
one
say, did
pair.
he give you a suit? Like,
No, he would do. He would do. Very hard to negotiate. I've had to negotiate with him. He was tough work like that. But basically, she said nothing about Brexit. She was so quiet. It was like me on my own.
that's
And then
wild.
some columnists, and then you've got like Claire Perry, who is like nuts, Richard Tice, and then Dimbleby trying to shout me down.
Wow. So proper representative. I mean, Labour were terrified in the aftermath. I think they were
But
still
they
trying.
still are. They still what they should do is
I
just
know.
rejoin. Just rejoin.
Yeah, because
Say
the papers
parliamentary democracy. Vote. I mean, obviously the EU would want more guarantees than that, but
the paper's going to fuck you anyway. Just do it. Someone here just said that you were Darren De Star. Thank you very much. Terry on Question Time was totally legendary. The studio nearly fell apart.
oh, do all that script. It was like a lynch mob towards the end. I remember the woman who
A
said,
lynch
well,
mob.
yeah, I remember the woman. Oh, some bloke who said to me, he said, well, I mean, like you, Terry, the media elite. I said, I grew up in
You?
a council estate. I said, he inherited a 400 million quid property empire, but I'm the
Boom.
media elite. I mean, that's always a thing again with the super rich. Is like, like Richard Tice. It's always implied that these people got rich by, starting with a market stall or something. Do you know
Oh,
what
of
I mean? And
course, yeah.
he inherited a massive property empire of his dad. The city tower in Manchester was owned and built by his dad.
Yeah, yeah, man. Like Farage, like City Boys. They're millionaires that went to private school.
Yeah, but
You're.
Tice is much richer than
Oh, no, no, no,
Farage.
absolutely. And it's
Farage is is
proper.
is oiky compared
It's
to Tice.
it's like he's blue blood wealth. I mean, Richard Marsden here, thank you very much, says reformer off blue, like a smelly version of the Tories. Just like you were saying earlier. Thank you, Richard. They're like, I don't think people realise in the grand scheme of things that we've not had a party that far off the Tories since Mosley. Like with what they're kind of coming out with. Like it's edging in that kind of mad direction, isn't it? It's kind of the Overton
Well,
window's
I
just
mean,
gone, whoop.
it's got to be the Russians. It's got to be, hasn't it? It's got to
I
be the
think
Russians, the
I
rise
would
of the
say.
far right. I mean, and then to allow the types of austerity we've had, austerity on top of austerity, that's exactly what caused the kind of factionalizing and the radicalization in the 1930s of the far left and the far right. And that's what the
Absolutely.
EU was set up to try and stop, create some stability. And they
Yes.
want to destabilize that.
And
I
we
mean,
are so much more vulnerable, aren't we?
well,
To
yeah, I mean, even the USA, it's crazy. The USA, the levels of poverty you see in the USA. But
yeah.
the only thing is, poor people all had cars there, even though they were like wrecks. Whereas I think
Or
my
big
dad used to have to go
gardens,
to work
yeah.
on a bike.
Yeah, no, no, and big gardens because there's more space, there's kind of more land. But I mean, what could go wrong with Trump, eh? Like taking away the food and the money and the healthcare of people with massive guns.
It's
I mean,
insane.
wonder how that's going to end.
Yeah.
Not well, but like it's like it here, really. I mean, they're all cashing in on what they've caused, and like you were saying with Russia, I think the influence there is very much like weakening us, not just economically. Well, economically is a big part of it, but it's also kind of like just bedding in on like decades of like decline in this
Well,
country.
well, they did it with Russia today, didn't they? So they'd have someone like Farage on. then they'd have a proper nut job like George Galloway on.
Oh,
And
wow.
Galloway is the
Yeah.
biggest fake on the planet.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I used to do a show on Talksport. I did the football phone in the final whistle for 2 years. And then George would do like a kind of political type show after. And it was always a bit conspiracy theory based, a bit of fun.
Doesn't sound like George.
And then one week he came on, and it was the week when Pope Benedict quoted some Byzantine emperor talking about, because he was taken in chains to the Sultan of Turkey. You know what I mean? As a prisoner after they captured Constantinople, and he said, "How evil must this Muhammad have been? Because of the actions of his followers." So Pope Benedict actually says, "Don't judge a religion by the action of its followers."
Mm.
But then when George Galloway came to, well, tonight I'm talking about Pope Benedict and George Bush attacking the Muslims again, and I said, well, actually, the Pope didn't say that. The Pope said this. He said, no, the Pope was attacking the Muslims. And I said, but he actually wasn't, George. This is what he said. I wasn't making it up. But he was getting really annoyed at me. So in the end, I went, so coming next on Talk Sport, it's George Galloway, and you've never jihad it so good. He wouldn't. He's never spoken to me since, and always been
No,
very, very bitter towards me.
that
But
doesn't
these people,
sound
there's
like.
no forgiveness in their soul, is there?
Well, there you go. I mean, what I was going to ask you is, do you think that there's any hope for working class artists moving forward without because they've not got any safety net, have they? They haven't got inheritance, they haven't got any
Well,
welfare
I
support.
think YouTube channels and the internet. I mean, a lot of it is shit, but
Cheers, man.
that's a thing. But the point is, you can get out there and you can say your bit, and
Yeah.
because really, other than when I was a kid, and then you're allowed to say it because it was a bit. There was only 3 channels in those days, and World in Action was very edgy. So the stuff I say, I'll go at Winston Churchill on it. You know what I mean? Being a dictator and all that. But
I just like to remind my
and I
viewers,
never
by
got
the
the
way,
public
that this
school
is
boys when I
not
was only
batshit.
21. But it's kind of, you know, that sort of thing has not been allowed. I mean, I did a show which is about moral issues and religion called It's My Life. And that was the only place where
Oh.
you saw kids from ordinary backgrounds able to speak exactly what they wanted to the camera. Because even on Question Time, they shut you up. You go on any panel. I remember doing the ITV version of Question Time with Tom Bradby on, and it
Mm.
was like all the default setting is Tory. They think you're weird because you had a Labour voter in the part in your whole family. As if one member of the party of your family was a psychopath or was I don't know, some weirdo.
Was an
And
axe
it was like,
killer. Yeah.
yeah, oh, could you imagine anybody? How could anybody vote Labour? And I was on with Kenneth Clarke, and they were all yakking on about Boris Johnson.
Mm.
And this was before he became an MP. He was about to step down as mayor and be an MP. And I was just
Right.
saying, I said, the further north you go, the thinner that guy's shtick. I said, I don't understand how anyone could vote for him. I'm like, so Kenneth Clarke starts defending him, and I started having a go at Kenneth Clarke. They turned my mic off. And at the end, as we're walking out, I heard Kenneth Clarke saying to one of the other guests, one of the other panelists, saying, I can't believe he pointing at me said he had me defending Boris Johnson out there because he obviously
Yeah,
thought Boris Johnson was a twat as well. And I said, well, why did you?
yeah, he didn't have
Why
to.
did you? Yeah, exactly.
This
If
is
you
that's
agreed with a lot of what I was saying, but it's the party line. The Tories, it's always party before anything else. I mean, that's what Dominic Grieve said before, that some Tory MP had said, if we don't Brexit, it will destroy the party. If we
this
do
is
Brexit, it will destroy the country. And they destroyed the country.
no,
And
I
they've destroyed the party as well.
I
But I think a lot of
agree.
that was putting Boris Johnson in there, wasn't it?
And this is how they win because no matter how fucking immoral and evil they are, they will clump together. Whereas on the left, you've got all this warring, you've got all these factions. You're getting it more on the right, but they're just fighting amongst who's like the most fash at the moment. There's that kind of like weird. They're trying to find their way
What they
whilst still
do, I
trying to
mean, don't
protect
forget,
Farage.
they've got something to protect. And then what they do is they get working classes fighting like rats in a sack over what's over the crumbs from the table. And you go,
Yeah,
well,
man.
these are your enemies. There might
Yeah,
be a problem with immigration. There might be a problem with all sorts of things, but you sort that out later. You sort this lot out first. You get
I
the
mean,
money, you get the houses built, and you get a better society.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
fight
yeah.
the power. I keep doing that with me trigger finger. It looks
What's happened?
indecent.
What's happened to
Well,
you?
it's from doing weights because I've got type 2, so I have to stay quite fit.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and what happened was, I think one of the heaviest weights about a year ago, it sort of bruised, the
Oh,
balls of your fingers.
yeah, yeah,
I was
yeah.
trigger finger in that. And I got a cortisone injection. It went away and it's come back again recently.
What is it like a repetitive strain injury?
Oh no, it's what happens is your finger locks and you have to
Oh,
go
well,
like
I've
that.
got that. Yeah, I've got what's it called? That thing where you hypermobility, where your joints kind of disconnect and they're too flexible. Like my shoulder will just pop out sometimes.
Oh, that's weird. Did you,
Yeah,
did you do gymnastics or something?
I wish. Yeah, I wish. I'm not quite cut out for gymnastics nowadays, but it must be really annoying for you because you can't do that.
Well,
Like,
it's not that. It's like just doing things like washing up or buttering a piece of toast.
can't you use? Oh, so are you right-handed then? Is it your right?
Yeah, so it's like it's really annoying.
Oh
You're
shit!
like that, and
You
then
can't do
and then
anything.
even with that on, it hurts. Anyway, I shouldn't moan, should I? Oh God, Spain are winning 2-1.
Who's playing?
It's the final of that European kind of conference thing.
I
You know,
was
the
talking to my
extra
brother about
competition they
this the
have.
other day, and I was saying, like, Dave, like, there didn't used to be this many cups. Like, there used to be just one or two, didn't there?
Well, they had like another international competition, and England
Yeah.
did rubbish in it. But yeah, so it's been the semi-finals this week.
There
And
was the Europa
Portugal.
Cup, wasn't there? And
They just equalised Portugal. Ronaldo. Ronaldo,
if you've just
age
tuned in,
40.
we are contrary to what he was talking about earlier on. Terry Christian does know football, so you're proving you're proving your former critics wrong. But what really pisses me off is how many people at the top of like the BBC are obviously Tory. Like you were talking about Question Time. People say to me all the time, "Dan, you should go on Question Time." I would fucking hate to go on Question
No,
Time.
I mean, what you have to do is, I mean, what's difficult, and I always found difficult, and maybe it is that maybe I have got ADHD or something like
You
that.
reckon?
Well, I mean, I'm all over the place,
You've
but it's like,
definitely got
get my
ADHD.
harmonica out. But it's like, but it's one of those where when you're talking about stuff like poverty and this, that, and the other, and you grow up. I grew up in an era where I remember my mum and dad panicking before the 1970 general election because if Heath got it, my dad might lose his job. And my dad was a
Yes.
shop steward in the trade union, and they wanted to get rid of those powers and they wanted to be able to sack people like my dad. They were always trying to offer my dad a kind of promotion
Mm,
into management where he wouldn't have the union protection, but he
mm.
didn't have any education. My dad had left school at 14, so he wouldn't have lasted. But then they could have got rid of him because he was too good as a
But
shop
that's
steward.
how pivotal it was. It was like whoever won the election, it was dependent on whether or not you'd be all right, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, or else you'd have the humiliation of ending up in free school dinners then, 3-day week, all of that stuff. But you see, it was like your whole life was about it because you lived on next to nothing. When I was a kid growing up, you had your tea at about 5:15. You weren't allowed anything after that. Nothing. You
Mm.
couldn't say you were hungry. You couldn't say that. Then when you're a growing lad, I mean, I think about my lads eating when they're 30. So my mum said you can have one piece of bread, but no butter. I used to watch Mission Impossible eating a piece of dry bread just so
Wow.
that you weren't going to go to bed really hungry. Now we were looked after, so we had our breakfast. But then I even remember when milk became too expensive, and there was a lot of us and cereal, so we all had to have a boiled egg every morning instead
Wow.
of a bowl of cornflakes or Weetabix. So it's those sort of margins. That's what makes the difference. And the safety nets are getting less and less. And it
There's
is
virtually
literally
none now.
people being sanctioned and having to live off a big bag of porridge oats
I
for
mean,
two
people
weeks. It's
literally died
disgraceful.
from austerity. I mean, huge numbers of people. They reckon it was like nearly 300,000 people under the Tory, the Cameron
Yeah,
era,
yeah, yeah. They don't care. They don't care.
starving to death in
I
in,
mean,
in Britain.
I like that. What's his name? That Gary Economics bloke.
Oh yeah.
Because when he talks about it, it's like you have to wonder when you read all those Charles Dickens books or you watch the films of Oliver Twist and all of that and the poverty that you got in the Victorian era and
Yeah.
even the early Edwardian pre-World War One levels of poverty, never
Mm,
mind the 1920s and 30s,
mm,
people allowed that. They allowed families to be on the street. They allowed kids to be bare feet and
mm.
dying of all sorts of diseases, and not getting treated by a doctor and having no food. 1832, they made quite an important new law in 1832. You know what it was? They decided you had to be over the age of 7 before you could be hung
Fucking
for
hell.
stealing. Yeah. Before that, they could hang you if you were 4, 5, or 6 if you were caught stealing.
Children in Britain.
Mm. Yeah. Now
Oh
they said, well, we let most of them off, i.e., sent them to Australia or whatever, to be like bummed to death. But yeah, that's what they used to do. The sentence was hanging for everything. And then people put up with it. The Boer War is when they brought in some kind of legislation to improve people's health
the Boer
because
War. Do you know
the
what,
Boer
Terry?
War, because there weren't enough healthy working classes to recruit into the army to send to South Africa. I mean, all the way through the 19th century, the Napoleonic Wars, the Crimean Wars, two-thirds of the British infantry were Irish or Scottish because in between famines they had better diets because they'd have milk and potatoes, a lump potato that was full of vitamins, so they had front teeth to bite the cartridges to load the muskets, whereas
Christ
the
alive.
English didn't. The English would have to be like, in the artillery because they couldn't go, oh, let me just, oh, I can't, let me tear.
And the
They're
whole
no
the whole
good.
thing about British dentistry, like people around the world take the piss out of it, but it's born of like mad inequality and poverty. Like,
I mean, it was always the English. So even if you think about the sort of, and this sounds terrible, but that serf mentality amongst the working classes, we were Irish. We were very different to the English working classes. You know what I mean? We didn't feel like we were lesser in that way.
I'm
And
not
also it's a
surprised. I mean, the what the British did to you lads, like, was
well, no, but I mean it was a different thing. So if you have you ever seen the film Reds?
no.
Warren Beatty, that's fantastic. So it's about John Reed, the American communist guy, and he goes over to Russia. So it's a true story. And one of his best friends was the great American playwright Eugene O'Neill. In the film, played by Jack Nicholson, I think it won Oscars and all that. Made about 1973, I think,
Not
Reds.
familiar.
Anyway,
No.
Jack Nicholson. So he plays Eugene O'Neill. And Eugene O'Neill was a great Irish American playwright. And he wrote one called A Moon for the Misbegotten. And in it, there's an Irish landlord, an Irish farmer who's in America. He's trying to get his daughter married off, but she won't have it. And the bloke she likes, he doesn't like. And then he has a new landlord who's English and he's coming to put his rent up, but he sends his servant. And his daughter says, "Oh, here he comes now on his master's work." And the character in Eugene O'Neill's play says, "Master is the word for sure. For what's an Englishman without some lord's backside to kiss? The dirty slaves."
Fucking hell.
But that was a kind of the idea of obviously, in the trade union movements, all of those things, all the leaders, even now with Mick Lynch and people like that, always Irish.
Yeah, man. That
Weird, isn't it?
I'm not surprised to hear that about Mick Lynch. But I was thinking about how if we had someone like that in Labour, front in Labour, or even something like I'm not really, I've got no beef with the Greens, but they're a bit
I mean, I
wishy-washy.
mean, there are people like that in Labour, but it's almost like you're always looking for allies. You can't
Like
be
your
the outlier.
Prescotts and you
Well,
know,
yeah, and then even then he had to, although he was doing all the big regeneration projects, which were really good, just before Labour got out. I don't know why they didn't fight a bit harder and stay in
yeah,
power
man.
after 2010. It wasn't a done deal that the Tories
Brown.
would win.
Brown was let down, man, and I really feel for him because he was the guy that did all of the redistribution, really. He was the guy that was handling all of the
All the employment,
testing.
all the employment laws, all the things that improved everyone's rights and consumer rights, all came from Brown.
Loads, I mean, he brought millions of elderly and elderly people and kids out of poverty. Ashley Wilson's got a question here for you, Terry. Right, thank you. Um, ask Terry. Is this a joke? Ask Terry if he ever visits Manchester.
I live here. Well, no, I live on the outskirts. Yeah, that's
He lives in the posh bit now.
no,
But
no. I live in the suburbs. I was in Manchester. Oh, last time I was in Manchester was Thursday.
well, what you were saying right earlier about the Boer War, I never know how to say it properly. Did you know that I was in my 30s before I even knew what that was? And it was thanks to years and years by Russell T Davis when he talked about it, when he was talking about the camps. The fact that the
Oh,
British
the concentration camps.
we
Yeah,
invented the camps
yeah, yeah.
and just let him
Lord
mention
Kitchener,
Lord Kitchener. Yeah, absolutely. And
and I
I
think Churchill was. Oh no, no. Churchill was a
no,
war
Churchill was
correspondent
yeah,
at the
yeah.
time. Yeah.
I was just blown away that that is such a dark bit of our history, and so many people to this day just don't know that. Like they have no idea that.
Well, we even shipped loads of the Boers off to. In fact, there was a film made, a South African film made about. We shipped loads of Boers off as convicts onto Tristan da Cunha. You know that little island right in the middle of the South Atlantic, in the middle of nowhere.
Was it the Madagascar plan? What was the Madagascar
Well, that's
plan?
the other side. That's east of Africa, in it, Madagascar.
No, but there was a Madagascar plan.
Wasn't that to do with the Jews?
I think it was like one of the. I don't know if that was British, but that was something. I mean, Graham would be able to tell us
I think
this.
it belonged to the French Madagascar.
But there was a Madagascar plan. I'll come back to that.
I think the Nazis wanted to send the Jews to Madagascar at one point in the 1930s. It
Yeah.
was their Rwanda plan, wasn't it?
This is what the Rwanda plan was based on. But what I was going to say is we should probably wrap up soon because I don't want to keep you from your football too long.
The last 20 minutes.
I was
Good
going to
game,
say,
though.
but before I let Terry go, or Terry can bugger off if he wants to. Have you got any questions for him that are interesting? But make them good, okay? Make your questions good. What's the score? Who's playing again? Sorry, I didn't quite
It's
catch it.
Portugal and Spain, so it's a final. 2-2.
Oh, that's a two
Two
all.
all. Yeah, 2-2 at the moment.
Is it the
20 minutes
final?
to go. Yeah. But the semi-final was Spain-France, and Spain won 5-4. That was an amazing game. And then
Oh,
Portugal came from one goal behind to beat Germany 2-1 in the other semi-final.
Spain and Portugal, what a match that must be. That's like the ultimate football.
Old school, old school. Bit of a grudge going on there.
And also you can't beat the Latin countries when it comes to
Well,
football, man.
neighbours, aren't they? England, Wales.
Everyone's
England,
good at
Scotland.
football apart from the twats that invented it.
No, we're good at it. It's just that we don't do the coaching. Everyone has to pay to do it. My youngest lad played for Man City's academy till he was 12.
Really?
So he could have gone somewhere else. But again, most places they'll sign you when you're about 9 or 10 and keep you then until you're like 15. So
Well,
you're allowed to
you're
develop and you're not panicking and under pressure every week.
you're
And
classed
then
out
what
of it. Yeah, because you've got to pay your subs, haven't you? I mean, and if you
well,
can't.
you'd have to pay your subs if you're with an academy, but you still need a parent to drive you there and drive you back and all the rest of it. I mean, my James used to play in the same team as Cole Palmer.
Mm,
Who plays for Chelsea now. Cole
mm.
Palmer, England, Chelsea.
When you first said it, when you said Cole, I thought you were saying Cole Porter. I was like,
Cole Palmer, but
I don't think I
he's
don't
from
think Cole Porter ever played
he's
football.
from Stockport, really good player. But so he used to play for Kingsway School, and then my oldest lad, I mean my youngest lad, was the captain of Bramall High School. So that was always a bit of a grudge game between them two.
Wow, man. I mean, I feel a little bit like it's something that you're still possibly priced out of, unfortunately.
Oh
And
yeah, I think for work because there's no spaces to play anymore. I mean, you get a lot of
grassroots
good
football,
players
yeah.
come out of London because within those estates they built those cages for the kids to play in.
Uh,
So that's where you get, like players like Ian Wright, David Rocastle, even Jadon Sancho, although he's been a bit of a flop for United. But you know what I mean? They came from those sort of areas where they had those facilities and they would get spotted and develop the skills and everything. Anyway,
and
I
the
should plug
team,
my comedy gig, shouldn't I?
you should. But first of all, I've got a couple of quick questions for you.
Yeah,
So
of course, yeah.
we're gonna do this quick fire, okay? Boom,
Yeah,
boom,
let me
boom.
let me go like that. So as if I'm looking at something, I've got a thing here now in case I want to take any notes.
All right. Well, Leapshin says this will probably be pretty quick for you. Oh wow. And you're
That's
wondering
an unused Christmas present.
if you've got ADHD. Ask Terry, what was the one thing on I'd do anything to get on TV that literally made him sick.
Oh, all of them, all of them. I absolutely hated that strand. I
Horrible.
mean, isn't that the irony that I'm the one who gets most associated with that strand, and
I
yet
don't
I'm the
remember that strand with you.
oh God, well, no, I did the voiceover for it. But if anyone wants to
Oh,
have a got me, yeah, you made people do this, that, and the other. But I hated it because I thought it was a gimmick and a contrivance, and I was right. But
and
the
it was
one
all
I hated the
bullshit.
most is the one that I use when I do my stand-up show. The word is Terry Christian, the naughty nineties and more. So it's clips from the words. We have Whitney Houston, clips from her, bit of Ollie Reed, bit of Sinead O'Connor, all of that. And I use one of the hopefuls, and it's the pubes on a cracker because it's like he does that, and it's his own pubes. Because what I remember was when he did it, because I used to do the voiceover with my eyes shut and go off sound effects. So I had my me thingy lined up, that afterwards I go, oh, disgusting. I ate cream crackers too. And then I'd say, with the Jacobs, and then go, who knows whose pubes they were? But actually, we showed him cutting his own pubes off. And what happens is he chews them and then swallows them. And then he goes, and obviously the pubes stick in his throat. And he goes, and that's it. Yeah, that
Oh,
that was one of the worst. And then a bloke who ate a worm sandwich and then breathed in me mouth after on
wasn't
white
there the
bread
guy
too
that
from
puked in a pint
Stoke-on-Trent.
glass and then puked in a pint glass or something?
Yeah, disgusting. But that was always a trick of medical students. So it's what they call a closed circuit. So actually, it's safe to do that with you. It wouldn't be safe for you to drink someone else's sick. There you go. You can have that one for free. Safety
Oh,
first.
I actually feel quite sick now. I
I
can't
mean,
think.
yeah, but the weird thing is the whole show got tainted by that. We only did it for half of series 4 and half of series 5.
Well, I'm not surprised though, because that was like at the same time as things like Eurotrash, where it was quite shock factor, wasn't it? It
Yeah,
was,
yeah, but we didn't need to do that. We were already
no,
doing well. Our figures went up every series, so
yeah.
it did nothing. All it meant was we couldn't get as good bands on. With certain bands started to turn us down. Good guests didn't want to come on because they thought, well, because we used to have guests like Hayley Berry, Natasha Richardson,
Oh,
Whitney
so it held
Houston.
you back.
Yes, well, yeah, and suddenly they're going to go, well, I don't want to go on that show. And, if I go on that show, no matter what I say about my new movie, all anyone's going to be talking about the following week is somebody eating a fucking maggot sandwich.
Or
I
licking an
mean, we have
armpit.
Dave Chappelle on, Dave Chappelle. We had loads of great guests until we started doing that. And that made
That's
our guests less.
that's wild to me. Someone just asked if the word is coming back, and to be honest with you, like in today's kind of like ultra beige, pretty shit, absent crap kind of cultural landscape, I doubt it. Do you
It,
reckon it
it,
ever?
it would be hard anyway because music's changed. So I do know what new bands and artists are coming through, but a lot of it is off sales. So there's that young lad Seb Lowe, from Saddleworth. He's very good. I mean, it's weird, the Fontaines DC. They should have been big years ago, and they've only kind of broken through now. You've got
Yeah.
Kneecap again. They've been around years. And funny enough, before them, there's a guy from Belfast called Jump Sue, Johnny Hamilton, whose dad was in the UDF. But
Oh
a
my
lot of his
God.
raps, his rap subjects are pro a kind of United Ireland. So he's
Wow.
fantastic in English, but he actually lived in Moss Side for a while. Jump Sue, an amazing rapper. But
That's
so
unbelievable.
there's still stuff out there, but it's different and it's kind of so even on the rap side in Manchester, you've got Meeks, who's from Gorton, you had H, you had Bugsy Malone, but Bugsy was around for a long time before he hit big.
I think it'd help. I think it would actually help these artists because they're really struggling because Brexit took away their ability to tour Europe.
Oh, just ridiculous.
And
And
any
then that famous interview with Roger Daltrey. Oh, as if we didn't do it before. You go, oh, yeah, Well, as if we didn't eat food before we lived in houses and we lived in caves.
hasn't got a clue, man. He needs to see that graph, right? Broadly. I mean, I think he'd probably be on the side of it to be fair, but that graph that shows like income and house rental prices, like just going like
It's
this,
disgraceful. I mean,
like
it
that.
wouldn't, but it wouldn't be allowed in most. I mean, now a lot of Europe is carrying up with this, and they call it the British disease, which is
Mm,
what they used to call football hooliganism.
yeah.
Because I mean, in Germany, up until recently, rents are a third of what ours are, whereas wages are over twice what ours are.
Yeah, and not just that, like I think our benefits allowance is like the lowest in one of the
Oh,
lowest in
always
Europe.
has, always have been. I remember in the 80s when there was a lot of mass unemployment, lads going to live in Amsterdam for a while to
Yeah.
sign on there because you
You
get
could
decent
sign
money
on
for
in
sign.
Amsterdam. That's
Yeah,
wild.
you could.
I did not know that. Could you, how until when?
I mean, this was like 1982,
Could you do it in like the 2000s? Were you still able to do
probably. I
that?
mean, don't forget. I mean, I was earning good money post from about
You
1988
you'd done all
onwards.
right out of it. Yeah. I
So
mean,
I
but
did, you know,
I
so
was
I wasn't bothered about people signing on. There
now I'm
is
worried
truth.
about a wasted opportunity. I was like, God, could I have actually like lived in could I have
Yes,
lived in
there is truth in that. There's an old Irish saying: "A full belly has a short memory,"
Yeah.
and it is true. I think when they call you champagne socialist and all that. I mean, not that I'm like rich, but it's like there is that thing when you start doing well, you try and block it all out. I can't
You
be.
just
You can't be doing with the guilt of it.
or you forget how hard it was. And also
Well,
you
well, no. I mean, as I said, when you go on these panel shows, it's when they talk about poverty, you get more triggered and you get angrier than other people because it's more visceral to you, and so it makes you sound a bit ranty.
Mm,
And they love that. They love to trigger you, a bit like a narcissist will. A narcissist will always say something really horrible to you, and then when you go, "Well, what about you?" And then they go, "Oh, look at you abusing me, calling me the c word and the this, that, and the other."
that's
And that's what you
wild.
you, you get attacked for your reaction rather than
Yes.
what you've said. They bait you.
Darvo.
Yeah, they bait you. Yeah, they bait you to have a go at you.
Deny, what is it? Deny attack, reverse offender, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I
Yeah,
mean
yeah.
it happens all the time, but it's like I think now that's one of the nice things about the internet because you think, oh, God, is it really me? And then you go, oh, fucking hell, no, she was fucking nuts, or he was nuts. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's a
It's
lot of it
wild.
now.
I mean, awareness is the only good thing, but the thing that really annoys me is people that were probably, able to buy a house in the early 90s for a fiver. I am exaggerating.
Well, yeah, no,
Um,
no. I mean, the early '90s, it wasn't cheap. But
it wasn't
if you'd have gone
expensive.
back, yeah, if you'd have gone back, I mean, the problem was when housing was cheap, it was hard to get a mortgage because I
There
could have
was no
bought
deposit. No
I could have
deposit.
bought a terraced house in Derby in like 1983 for about 8 grand, and I was earning
Wow.
160 quid a week, so basically 8 grand a year. But they wouldn't give me a mortgage because they didn't have 7 years' earnings on my books as a freelance. I mean, I'm sure there's ways around it, but now it's the same. You're spending more money on rent than would cost you in a mortgage, but no one will give you a mortgage.
It's near impossible. Like, because you're paying off your landlord's mortgage for like
Oh yeah, it's
basically most of
disgraceful.
your month. And then you've got absolutely nothing on the side. And then you've got fucking boomers who could, on one person's wage, whilst raising a family and keeping one person at home, buy a house with no deposit, telling you that, oh, you just need to cut down on Netflix and avocado. It's like, fuck off.
Well, I mean, to be fair, they're all losing the houses because what happens now is when they have to go into care, the houses end up being sold to pay for their care at about 10 grand a week. And guess what? All these Tory MPs are heavily invested in
Absolutely.
care homes.
Yeah, and their landlords. They're
Yeah.
landlords
Yeah, but the
too.
care homes is the one that hoovers all the dough up quick. Oh, lovely. Yes. Oh, your house is worth 250 grand. Well, that'll pay for your care for about 2 years.
It's mad the conflict of interests though, across the board. I mean, I'm not going to get onto this
Well,
topic
that's where the corruption is.
I'll be here all night because there is so much corruption. Like people don't realize that they they don't just own like multiple homes that they're renting out in London whilst also making the laws about the rent control and shit like that. It's the same with care. And we've got no social care system. And oh, why aren't they trying to fix it or sort it out? Because they make loads of bank out of private care. It's wild. And you almost everything that you look at in terms of what this country needs, they've got their fingers in
Well,
somewhere.
we're a feudal state. So
Absolutely.
basically, half the land in this country is still owned by the same people who stole it in 1066.
Oh
You
man,
know?
did you see that documentary about the royal family recently by Channel 4 Dispatches about them owning basically like making loads of money out of the NHS, making loads of money
Oh,
out of
well, do you remember
beaches.
Russ? Remember Russ in Cheshire?
Oh
and
yeah.
his stepdad died or something like that, and because he hadn't written a will, it all went to the Duchy of Lancaster. His
What?
house, yes. So if you die intestate, is that what they say? Intestate, you've not done a will. It all goes to fucking Prince Charles.
I thought testate was balls. Like I
All
didn't.
right, I don't know.
It
Intestate,
it all
i.e.,
goes
without a will.
to
So basically, it's like if you've not written a will and you die, with no one in your will, it doesn't go to. You don't say, well, let's divide it equally up between his nieces, nephews, and whatever. It all goes to Prince Charles.
That is fucking wild. I had no idea. I mean, they didn't mention that in this program. They were mostly talking about the fact that because obviously they're the biggest landowners
Yeah,
in
yeah. They've got
Britain.
they're renting all their mouldy cottages out as
Not
well.
just that, but like they're also making money out of fire stations. They're making money out of like they're
Yeah,
letting
ambulance stations,
ambulance stations. They're letting beaches crumble, and
the
they're
seabed,
yes,
where we've killed off all the seagrass anyway, and that's like an ecological
William's getting
disaster.
involved in that now. But the
Yeah, yeah, because he
scandal of it.
owns it. That's why he
I
wants it
was
all to grow
gonna
back.
I was gonna say someone here just before we go. Baker's doesn't very good username, man. Yeah, duck. Buy your son a bag of chips. I just did the worst northern accent that I think you've ever seen. Could you do it better for me, please? Help me out.
Then that's like East Midlands. Duck is
Yeah,
what they say in
duck.
Derby, don't they? Derby,
Sen is
Stoke.
I had a housemate that was from like oh God, where were they from? Doncaster way, I think.
Well, no,
So
that's
Donny?
Yorkshire. That's South
Donny.
Yorkshire. But Duck is very much sort of East Midlands, and then even Stoke.
But
So
Sen is
Jack
very
O'Connell
Yorkshire.
is Sen, yeah.
Yeah.
Jack O'Connell. Have you ever seen him? You know the actor Jack O'Connell.
No, I don't.
He's a
Well, they
massive
don't. I
English
can't
actor,
visualize it.
but he's really Derby. He's got a really strong
Oh,
Derby accent. I didn't even know that myself till I saw him being interviewed about a film he was in recently, Sinners, and he's got this really strong Derby
Sinners.
accent. God bless you. Yeah, Ryan Coogler, Sinners.
I've heard
What
a
was
lot of
it?
good things about Sinners,
Well,
but
I mean, it's interesting. The girl in it, won me assault. She's from you. She's just from around the corner from where I grew up, but doing an American accent. All black British actors have to go to the States, don't they, to get work.
I don't. Well, I don't know. Like there was some really. There's been some really. There's been some breakaway ones. Oh, I suppose no. You're absolutely right there. When you look at the, I'm not a Star Wars fan, so I can't remember the name of the actor there,
Oh,
but
John Boyega, Boyega,
yeah, yeah,
Boyega.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not. Do you know what? I never saw Star Wars until my kids were little. I
I've
quite
never
enjoyed.
fully
I quite
watched
enjoyed the
it.
second one, but I was big into science fiction. But of course, when it came out of the pictures, I was like 16. I thought it seemed a bit babyish to me.
Well, all the
Star
men in my
Wars.
family put it on, and I just fucking drowned it out. I didn't want to listen to it. I just pretended it wasn't happening.
All
But
the
I've
all
heard
the
good things about Andor.
all the adults who were into, when they bought Doctor Who back a few years ago.
Mm.
And I was writing a column for this magazine. I think it was Lancashire Life or something. I said, at the moment, everybody's going really excited. Someone
Mm.
said to me, "Are you excited about the new Star Wars film and Doctor Who coming back?" And I
Mm.
thought, everyone's talking about it. And I thought, no, I'm not. And I had to wonder why. And then I realised it's because I'm not 10.
Oh, but fantasy isn't like, I mean, I must admit, I don't really like fantasy unless it's like retro Legends of Zelda. Like, that's where I'll draw the line.
Legend, that's a computer game, isn't it? That's
Yeah,
not a
yeah, but
proper story.
that's the only thing I'm into. I've never watched Lord of the Rings. I've never
Oh, Game
watched
of Thrones. No,
Game of
I
Thrones.
like all them. Game of
Oh no,
Thrones
it's
and
not my
Lord of the
thing, you know.
Rings.
There's not enough hours in the day as far as I'm concerned to waste my life on that.
Oh no, great.
But no, I'm gonna have
That's
to
all
wrap.
hours are for, is for wasting. You don't want to be
Well,
working all the time
I no, I
or creating stuff just for some posho to say, "What, you've spent 6 months doing this." I don't see you as somebody who does
not
this.
quite saw
Fuck
that
off.
you don't fit the bill. You haven't got a castle, I'm afraid. But no, I think this is egalitarian YouTube, right? Like, you were saying earlier on, you're quite right. A lot of it is shit. Hopefully not this included. But
No, well, I'm doing my culture thing, and I'm going to wait for them to say yes, but I don't think it's really culture, is it?
Unbelievable. But
I just need to get on it and get a bit more organised, like you are. You're all
well,
organised.
I find it absolutely hilarious that you think that I am organised because I'm,
Everything's comparisons, isn't it? You
oh,
know,
actually, what compared to you? Oh, brilliant.
I
Okay.
go through phases of great organisation, like even getting all them pictures framed and signed. And
Honestly,
I've got about 20 of them, original Top of the Pops ones from Harry Goodwin.
I couldn't
But that
relate.
was basically a day's work.
I couldn't relate to you more because I've got things in frames that have been sitting there for the best part of a year, bloody dust gathering them. But I think because I'm actually like starting to resemble Rudolph, I've got a proper bad cold, everyone.
Oh
So if I'm
no.
a bit like I look proper red nosed now, I'm Rudolph the red
Yeah,
nosed.
you shouldn't have rubbed it. You should have just let it dribble down
Oh
and
yeah, because that'd look
then
even better, wouldn't it?
dabbed it like, like when you've been crying under your mascara, just dabbed it
Wow.
underneath.
But before we go, someone's Reg Pie, thank you, great username. Super Show, please can we have Terry on again sometime? If he'll bloody come back, of course.
Yes, of course. Plug, yeah, me gigs.
Yeah, I was
So
gonna
I'm at,
say, okay, so we're gonna wrap up now. But before we go, first off, just want to say a massive thank you to Graham Hughes of Politics Social,
yeah, he's handy, isn't he?
our ginger legend there. Politics Social is a great channel. It's all linked in the description of this. So yeah, thank you, Graham. You're our hero. And tell us what you're going to be up to, Terry.
Right. So, well, I've got two stand-up shows. So one is based on the word. So it's the 30th anniversary of it finishing this year. It's called The Word is Terry Christian, the Naughty 90s and More. So it's like a stand-up show, but with clips of the word on a giant screen, and I do a Q&A, and it's unfiltered. Just don't grass me up. I don't want to get sued.
Andy gets his
So
kit off.
so I'm doing Shrewsbury, I think, on the 11th of July, then Glossop on the 18th. So I think it's a St Mary's Church in Shrewsbury as part of their comedy festival. And then I'm back in Edinburgh in
Mm.
August with my Confessions of an Irish Catholic, which is
Oh,
I do the full saints. I get all the statues of the saints. Here's a broken one. Oh shit, his head's come off as
he's never
well.
coming back.
Here's a broken one, St. Patrick, but I do them all and I go through what they all
Oh,
do.
his head's come off.
I know that's not lucky. That's lucky if it's an infant of Prague statue, but not with St.
I'm
Patrick.
sure that when people say things are lucky, like a bird shitting on you, it's because like the first ever person that had it happen was like, "Oh shit, a bird! Oh,
No,
it's
no, no.
lucky. It's lucky."
That's what my show's about: superstition and
Oh,
clinging on, and being brainwashed as a kid into
oh,
believing stuff, and how you never really escape the belief. But at the same time, because of knowing that it's impossible to be perfect, we grew up with leaky boundaries, and that's why we make such good gangsters, the Irish and the Italians,
that's
because you
fascinating.
might as well be hung for a sheep as a lamb. The thought is the same as a deed. That's what we were told. So that's the theme, although it's a bit lighter than that. Think more Father Ted meets Dave Allen, and I'm at the Edinburgh Festival at one of the stands. I don't know which one. From
No,
sometime for eight nights in August. Got 9 out of 10 last year. I just changed the name of the show from Naked Confessions of a Recovering Catholic, which I thought was a bit too Guardianista. And
yeah.
they're never going to give me a good write up anyway. You know what I mean? Those twats that hate
The
me.
Guardian.
Yeah,
No,
because
I don't.
you're
I
not
don't.
really one of them. But obviously the show is really good, and it goes down well with the Scottish
It sounds
audience.
so interesting, man. It sounds like I
It's
would.
funny. It's not interesting. It's messed up. It's funny. I always say when people say, well, "What's it about?" I say, "Well, it boils down to I'm a bit of a cunt, but it's God's fault."
I mean, that's the excuse that they've been using for centuries, man.
Well, exactly.
Um,
Why take responsibility for yourself? That's what I say when
I
there's
mean, where's
there's God.
where's the fun in that? I mean, someone just said here, Super Chuffer, thank you so much. Watch Nirvana live on the Word changed my life. I think it did for a lot of people. And also, Darian, thank you very much. Darian DeStar. Website for Terry's shows listings, please. When's
Oh
he
right,
doing?
I'll do that. I'll
Um,
stick that on. Yeah,
no, it's cool, man. I think we've got a list. I think one of the links in the thing would have that on, wouldn't it?
yeah. There's some rearranged ones though as well.
Okay, but he does say, can he do it near a tube station, please? I mean, I think we're going to have to see how that
No,
goes.
look, I need to get gigs in London. I've only ever done one in London, and that was the Word one. I did it at Walthamstow Trades Hall, and it was sold out.
Are you
But
allowed in
it, but
London?
it's oh, they love me in London. There's loads of exiles down there. They need the entertainment, don't they?
They need yeah, they definitely.
Otherwise, you've just got that David Lawrence.
Otherwise, you're
What's his
just
name? Is he the
sitting.
one that got banned from Liverpool the other week for making
Andrew
that really? Oh, Andrew
Andrew
Lawrence.
Lawrence. He's
Jesus.
man. The guy's about as funny as cot deaf. I was like reading through his tweets, and he was trying so hard to rely on that old Bernard Manning style of
Yeah, but,
comedy.
the weird thing is Bernard Manning was actually funny. I.e. in his delivery.
But
Oh,
that's
he
the
didn't give a shit.
difference. I mean, yeah, I mean, the difference is like that at least he had something about him. I mean, this guy just talks like this and he thinks that he's funny and he looks like an albino mouse. And I just sat there and I was thinking, do you know what? Yeah, you've said offensive stuff about Liverpool, but one of the worst things is that you're just shit, mate. You
He
just
looks like he needs a course of vitamins, doesn't he? And
he
I'm
look
saying that as
scurvy, yeah.
as a ravaged 65-year-old bloke
Well,
with type 2.
lad's got rickets, I reckon. Like I would go as far as to say, like, what will get him first, scurvy or rickets?
I'll pray to headless Saint Patrick for him. Shit.
Pray for him to get, I don't know, trebucheted off a pier. Like, that would be
But
my
I
idea.
just thought it was so weird what he did because you're going, well,
Do you know what he was
it's
doing
not
though?
funny and it's a bit 70s. He was doubling down on being a dick, wasn't he, really?
But do you know why? Because on that platform, you are literally because it's like a cross between what was I described it as the other day, a cross between Truth Social and an SS team building weekend. Like the thing is, you get rewarded for it, and he knows. But the thing is, those likes on there are largely bots because it's like the dead internet theory coming to life. But in real life, he will get chinned by a Liverpudlian. Whereas, like online, he's not really going to get any real. I'm not saying it should happen, but it probably will. I mean, they don't forget. Nobody forgets.
But I mean, where's he getting his bookings?
Well, he will probably do what Wotton does, which is set up a YouTube and get like make really clickbaity stuff about Harry and Meghan, get like loads of views there, and you can make a fortune with the kind of
You know
views
what
Dan Wotton has.
he came and had a snide at me on Twitter about 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
Welcome to the party.
No, so so at the time, I said, "Shouldn't you be out? Shouldn't you? Aren't you too busy outing young boy band members against their will?"
What, like Stephen
Anyway,
Gately, wasn't it?
next thing you know, I'm on Good Morning Britain as a guest, and he sat right opposite me. He didn't look up once.
Really?
He was like that,
You
and
intimidated him.
I was like that. I bought my old Trafford game
What,
face.
you were giving
I
him the
was,
proper like
I was like that.
the entire
Loved it.
time. The
Hey,
entire time. Oh my
oh,
God.
it's just but there's something very slug-like about him.
Yeah, man, he is quite vast, like a slug. Yeah, he's got
No,
this.
no, just there's just not. You can tell he's like creep. I don't understand how anyone thought he'd be good on TV because
No,
he
I'm
looks
not even
like
like
it. He's got
body shaming.
that funny little New Zealand kind of accent. He's just like God. He's just
He's
fucking
just got
horrible.
that kind of like
He's
air
not
of
friendly or affable, is he? You know what I mean?
no, he's slimy. He's a slimy
Yeah.
guy.
There's
Yeah,
no
and
sort of affability. You couldn't imagine going down the pub with him. You might even be able to go down the pub with some of the horrible, like, you might be able to have a bite with Tommy Robinson.
I
You
would have
couldn't,
a
you,
pint
you
with
couldn't
Tommy
with Andy.
Robinson if I was allowed to piss in the glass. That would be my one caveat. It would be like,
Imagine you're a
yeah,
bit restricted now, where you could go for a pint with him. He gets barred from everywhere, doesn't he?
oh no. I mean, well, that's it's just people utilizing their free will and free
And
speech.
I'd have to say, I'd have to go, Tommy, first before we go anywhere. Do they sell socialist champagne? Otherwise, I'm not going. I'm not going if I can't have some socialist champagne.
Well, we know, yeah. I mean, that's the only brand you'll drink, isn't it, nowadays?
Yes.
Apparently, according to your critic, it makes me laugh, man. I mean,
And
like,
it's like that. You think, how do you really think I've got that much fucking money? The champagne
unbelievable. I
socialist.
get, I get called a champagne socialist. I'm like, mate, I'm on like basically minimum
Well,
wage.
yeah,
You
yeah. Well,
mad?
I'm busy being the media elite as well, and now you'll be the media elite with
Oh,
you.
apparently.
They'll be going. Look, I can see two doors in your house and a shelf. with
That
stuff on it.
yeah, that one goes through to the slide down into the pit where I work 74 hours a day. That one, I don't know where that goes. I'm not allowed out there. I feel a little bit like I'm in heretic and I've got to choose which way
What
to.
you need is you need a bigger bookcase with posher books on.
Oh, I mean they're not that. I mean we've got old
I
mates.
might I might turn mine around and get it ready. I always noticed that they always did this, even back in the 80s, media trick, whenever you'd always get somebody interviewed with a load of books behind them to make them look smart when really
Yeah.
they're talking a load of old shite. But that's the
I,
trick. Talk posh, talk slowly with a load of books behind you.
talk
And you don't
slow.
have to say anything. You can be like Richard Tice and just go, what utter nonsense.
What utter non. Well, can I tell you something that
That's
is
it.
true? I've literally read. Oh shit! Extreme close up. I've literally read two of those books on that shelf behind me, two, and the rest of them, because of my ADHD brain, I have had to listen on an audiobook. Otherwise, I'd never get round to it.
But look, how is it? I've got an ADHD brain, but I read and read and read.
I mean, lucky you, man. I mean, I lost my attention span and all of my sense years ago, I think. I don't know. Maybe it was the end of the rave scene that did me in. But I think once you get out of the habit of it, but I use them for reference now. So
Just before you go to sleep, 20 minutes of reading.
that's a very good idea. I think I'm about to go to sleep now. I'm losing. But no, thank you
Okay,
again.
right.
Quick.
This is going into extra time, which isn't too bad.
Oh,
Hey, listen,
I'm going.
great to speak to you, Tan, and I'll send you some more links, and yeah,
No,
we'll do
no,
it
no.
again.
Guys, if you would like to check out where Terry's going to be, look in the description where it will have a link to. I think it's your most recent upcoming, your newest show, and also your Edinburgh
Yeah,
show.
yeah. So I'm going to do some warm ups, but most of them will be around Manchester. But I am really looking for a proper show in London,
What's the name
even
of
if I
your
could do a run
website
of
again?
3 nights. Hey,
What's the name of your actual website?
I can't remember.
Just Google Terry Christian
I
and
mean, it's some guys just set it up for me again because I did have one, and then someone said they could do a better one. So he then took that one down, passed it over to them, and they never did build a better one. So I went back to him 6 months ago to reinstate the old one.
well, you update people on Twitter, right? If you're not
Do
following,
I? No, I'm too busy starting fights with them
oh
or
my
wanting to
God,
annoy them. I do love annoying them though.
I'm
Going update. Lucy Connolly's still in prison.
Lucy Connolly
I
fart.
feel so. I feel so bad. If ever bumped into her, I'd feel really bad
Well,
that
you're not
I
likely to
didn't.
because she's in fucking prison.
I know, but when she'll be out. She'll be out by August,
She'll
won't
get
she?
out eventually. They always
In
do.
time for the school holidays. I
I
bet
don't think
she'll skip her daughter out of school to get a cheaper holiday in September or
I don't
October, I
think
bet.
you're likely to bump
Or will
into
she
her.
crowd fund for one?
Honestly, man, you should rename yourself Beefeater because you are just serving gammon all day.
I know, but the worst thing is I get such a buzz off it.
That's a dopamine hit. Classic ADHD, man.
And no, I know, but I really love annoying them. And the thing is, they're all like fake bots. But
Some of them are.
they quite like me playing whack-a-mole with them as well. I know that they do.
How's the weather in St. Petersburg, comrade?
Yeah,
But
well,
no,
whatever.
it is proper. Like I notice when I'm not taking meds, if I have a bit of time off the meds, I do start getting my dopamine out of a scrap. It
All
really is a
right, oh
thing.
shit. I
Yeah.
need to get some. I'll have to borrow some meds off you because
I'll post you. No,
I,
send me your
I,
address. I'll post you some.
oh no, seriously, because
No, I'm being serious.
I tried to get a diagnosis. I've still not. They've not even got back to me for a meeting with the person who tells you you're bonkers.
And they know
Sorry,
we're shit.
not that people with ADHD are bonkers, by the way. But
Well,
you know
I
what I
kind
mean?
of am, to be honest with you. And also, like, they know we're really bad at admin, so they're just doing us in at the source. It's like we're
I
really
know,
bad at following
but
up.
that's it. I mean, if I had all that money that I've wasted over the years by paying bills late when I had the money anyway, what
Yeah.
was I doing sitting there thinking, no, I'll pay it later.
Or
Oh,
returning
900 quid.
items.
Oh, you got a court order. And
Do you have problems?
it wasn't like I didn't have the money. I just didn't have the organization. Quite
Same.
embarrassing.
I found something that I should have returned in my. I've got this like little like crappy ottoman at the bottom of my bed. I found in there yesterday something that I should have returned 2 months ago, and it wasn't cheap. So now I'm trapped because I'm never going to get it on eBay. I'm never.
I've got 800 quid's worth of checks from the 90s that I never cashed in.
I don't think you need the diagnosis, but you do for the drugs. So get on that. Get on that. Anyway, thank you so much for
All
joining us,
right.
Terry.
Right,
And again,
thanks, Sam.
thank you to Graham of Politics Social for producing. This has been the Sunday service with the legend that is Terry Christian. Thank you and good night.
All right. Cheers. Hey, thanks, Tam. See ya.